microphone lightly. I'm trying to get your mic a little bit more into you because I was told to be first. It's been a little loud. You've got a big, deep voice. It just comes over the mic really well.
Absolutely. Yeah. About.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, thanks for coming. There's plenty of space up front if anyone needs a seat. Don't be a stranger. I call the Tuesday, May 6, 2025 board meeting to order. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Please note that this is a regular scheduled meeting. It's held to conduct district business. It is open to the public and it is being recorded. First item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion prior to the approval? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Jennifer and seconded by David. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried and the agenda is approved. First up, we have recognition this evening, so I'd like to call Julie Schultz-Bartlett up to the podium to talk about all of the beautiful artwork that you see here behind you and on all around us, actually.
All right, good evening. Good evening. I'm pleased to present to you the participants from this year's Sister Cities International Young Artist Showcase. The theme this year is Friendship, the Heartbeat of Global Peace. This theme underscores friendship's role in fostering understanding, collaboration, and peace worldwide. We are excited to partner with our Gig Harbor sister cities in this endeavor. Our sister cities are Buda, Norway, and Sulka, Croatia. We have a robust group in Gig Harbor who plans with our Peninsula School District as well as with representative from those different countries, and we are excited to foster friendship through our middle school art display. One of our strategic plan goals, as you know, is to ensure inclusive communities and culture, and that includes having students think of themselves as global citizens. The art that students were creating today asks them to consider how they experience friendship around the world. Our showcase encourages creativity in visual arts, essays, poetry, and music as a means to illustrate how international friendships promote positive understanding. There are beautiful paintings, sculpture, drawings, original essays, and original music the students composed. and also poems. The Sister Cities International Network inspires communities and leaders around the world. We're excited to share this student art with you. Looking forward, we're going to continue working to have our students think about themselves, not only their present place here in Gig Harbor, but historically their past as well as their future. We are looking to install some peace polls later on this month, which will be including languages and cultures that are part of Peninsula School District's heritage as well as our current student population. Thank you.
Thank you, and I encourage you, if you haven't noticed before, there's a peace poll already out in front of this school. So this one says the traditional "May peace prevail on earth," but can you talk just for a second about what students came up with
Sure.
instead?
So for our peace polls, we had our middle school students vote on what they would like their school's peace poll to say, and even though they were all independently gathered, every school selected "In peace we learn, in peace we grow." And so that will be on our peace polls at each of our middle schools. The languages will be in Croatia and Norwegian, and then Tulshutsi as some of our heritage languages, and then also English and Spanish, Mandarin, and Arabic, which represent languages that are spoken here by families in Gig Harbor and Key Peninsula.
Love it. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're going to start with our reports for this evening, but before we do so, I have a statement that I would like to read on behalf of the board, and I apologize, I'm going to read it, but I just want to make sure that we get everything said that was intended to be said. So before we start our budget and staffing update report, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that there has been anxiety and fear from some of our community members. Questions surrounding staffing, school leadership assignments, and potential program changes has understandably caused concern among some of our families and staff. We've heard from many of you through emails, phone calls, meetings, and even petitions, and we want you to know that your voices matter to us. What I've appreciated so much about these conversations is that the concerns are not singularly focused, but rather reflect a misunderstanding of the driving forces behind the decisions. And I appreciate that our community really wants to understand why, and we believe that you deserve that information. We are in a challenging moment right now, not just as a district, but as a state. State-level budget reductions, declining enrollment, and the end of certain federal funding streams have very real effects on our schools. And at the same time, our district leaders are working to align and our leadership with the evolving needs of our schools and students. These decisions are difficult, sometimes painful, but they're made with a focus on long-term success for student outcomes. Unfortunately, in the absence of timely communication, sometimes misinformation and speculation can take root, especially on social media, amplifying fear and undermining trust. Part of the reason for that lack of information is the time and consideration and process and all the coordination that has to take place prior to any of these moves, and in fact, they're still happening. So in light of the public attention, though, the board has directed the superintendent and our CFO to provide a comprehensive presentation that's intended to offer some clear and accessible, transparent information about how enrollment trends impact staffing levels, how decisions are shaped by our collective bargaining agreements, how funding changes affect programs, and the leadership strategy behind these recent changes. We believe that accurate information is essential to moving forward together. These decisions are absolutely not made in a vacuum, but we also recognize that based on how this has unfolded, it may not feel that way to everyone. So this board remains focused on improving academic outcomes for all of our students, even as we face some really hard realities, which includes oftentimes doing more with less. While we trust that these decisions are made with great care, our priority as a board is to make sure that we are doing what's right on behalf of all of our students. So we know that sometimes hard decisions just have to be made, and it's a tremendous responsibility that Superintendent Barr carries in making those decisions, but in instances where we can focus on stronger communication strategies to transition and help our families come alongside us through that process, we hope that the district is willing to be collaborative in that endeavor as well. So with that said, I'd like to call Ashley Murphy, our CFO, to the podium, and she's going to give us an update on the budget and staffing.
Okay. So I want to start off by stating so individuals that, I don't know, don't have much to do on Tuesday afternoons and like tuning in for our budget presentations. You're going to see charts, you're going to see graphs, you're going to Here information that you have already heard presented, okay? So I'm just gonna throw that out there. The goal of this presentation, though, was taking sort of that totality approach of what does school district funding look like? How do we receive our funds? Where are we receiving our funds? What do those impacts look like over the last 3 years? And what are we doing to combat, sort of piggybacking off what Natalie said, what are we doing to combat these reductions in revenues that not only is Peninsula School District seeing, but districts across the state are also seeing? So the presentation I'm going to be working off of, it's titled Fiscal Responsibility in Action. The topic areas that we're going to be going over, we're going to look at our strategic plan, specifically focusing on that goal of fiscal responsibility. We're going to go over what is prototypical funding, what is prototypical staffing, where did we start? And when I say where did we start, what I'm really saying is where did I start? Because individuals that have watched this, this financial overview of over the last 3 years, they can think back to 2022 when this district was doing a formal right sizing, a formal RIF. What were the financial trends at that time? What data were we looking at? Where are we now? So we did that work in 2022. A lot of you know that we then did additional work last year, and now you're hearing about additional moves. So how does this all play into the bigger picture? Then what we're going to talk about is what are binding conditions, okay? Binding conditions in layman's terms, it's bankruptcy for school districts. So what is that? Categorical funding, what are categorical funding streams and how are they being utilized within the district? What are funding impacts for this upcoming school year, 25-26? And what are our overall staffing impacts that we're looking at as of right now based upon the data that we have? So we're going to start off by looking at our strategic plan. I know this is not new to a lot of you, so our goal of fiscal responsibility says that we're going to efficiently and transparently align human, financial, and physical resources to support effective, innovative educational programs and facilities. So I present on a monthly basis where we are financially, not only to current year budget, but I also trend back to prior year budget. I also give information on legislative session, impacts through legislative session. So that's something that during my entire tenure here in this district that I've been doing in order to ensure that our community is kept apprised of our current financial situation. This then goes into that specific objective area, which is sharing financial information that is easy to understand. It promotes transparency and accountability. I always present off of, I call them, they're my Forecast 5 reports, but these are graphs and charts that are really easy for an individual that's not coming from a financial background to understand. We need to provide effective, efficient, and innovative service models for district-wide operational systems. Examples that are in that area are things like us instituting Red Rover this year, which is a substitute management system that has allowed us to increase our fill rate for substitutes in this district past 90%. This is a significant increase over prior years when we were utilizing another system. So it's looking at cost going out, and how do we go ahead and make sure that we're creating those innovative programming that allows us to continue to support all of our staff in all of their positions. Lastly, it's attracting, developing, and retaining high quality and diverse staff. Some of the things that you're going to hear about is the fact that our retention rate for staff, for certificated staff, has increased every single year for the last 4 years. We are developing not only our teachers, but also our principals to continue to sort of climb that ladder. We want them to continue to aspire to grow to that next level, and we work with them on developing their skill set in order to be able to do so. So you're going to hear more about that as we go through, but I wanted to ground us back in that strategic plan area so that you can see as we go through the rest of these data points that is the place where we are making these decisions. When we make a decision in order to either shuffle staff or to change up programming, it's all aligned back to this fiscal responsibility area of the strategic plan and ensuring that this district is going to remain solvent. So we're going to start this presentation, and again, I apologize for those of you that have already heard me talk about prototypical staffing multiple occasions, because I understand that it can be dry, but it is extremely important to understand how the state is funding public school districts, because as we go through this presentation, you're going to see some alarming gaps, especially when you go back to 2017 and 18 time period post-McCleary, when the state was out there telling community school districts are now fully funded. So you're going to get information on what does the state consider fully funding for a school district in current times. Okay, so for staffing, the state says that a prototypical high school is going to have 600 full-time equivalent students. A prototypical middle school at the state level is considered only 7th and 8th grade. 6th grade is not included in their counts. So between 7th and 8th grade, you are going to have 432 FTE in order to equate to a prototypical middle school. A prototypical elementary school, which is K through 6, is going to be 400 students. So the state counts a elementary school as having 400 full-time equivalent students. All of this staffing is comprised in what's called the apportionment document. The apportionment document is a bunch of different algebraic equations for total FTE in each level, which is driving funding for specific positions. This is really important because when you hear the state funds a specific position, let's say, a principal at the middle school level for every 432 children, they're not funding what Peninsula School District is paying for that staff member. They're funding the formula, so a number that the state has set forth, and we'll go into more detail about that. The funding formula breaks all of our staffing into 3 different categories: CAS, CIS, and CLS. CAS is certificated administrators. So this could be a principal, but it could also be a district office administrator that currently holds a position that requires a certificate. CIS are our instructional staff, and CLS is our classified staff. So an individual could be a district administrator. They may have a certificate, but their position they currently hold does not require a certificate. Therefore, they are considered a classified staff member, not a certificated staff member, from the state funding aspect. This is important because certificated individuals are compensated more in the funding formula than classified staff members. So you're going to see that disparity in a few slides. If a district pays more than the funded value, they must cover that excess with local funds or what the state deems as excess state funds. By excess state funds, what I'm talking about is they fund your district for 10 certificated librarians. One, it's hard to find 10 certificated librarians for a school district. But in addition to that, a lot of school districts use a library tech model. So a classified individual in the elementary and middle school level, and then they'll have a certificated librarian at the high school level. So if the state is funding you at that value for 10 certificated librarians and the school district opts to have the library techs, which are paid at a lower value, the difference in those funds is considered excess state funds, okay? So when I say excess state funds, I'm not talking about the state just giving us a bunch of extra dollars. It would be nice if they did, but what I'm talking about is how you utilize the dollars coming in for those different revenue streams. Districts have the ability to cost shift between some positions, not all positions, because as the state has changed some portions of the prototypical funding formula, what they've done is now earmarked the dollars coming in for that avenue to those specific positions, as in they give you an enhanced allocation for counselors. The district cannot choose to use it on anything but counselor salaries. And so we're seeing more of that as the state gives more funding. The state is also dictating where that funding will be utilized. That also plays into this. The RCW that governs the prototypical staffing is listed there below for individuals that want to learn more about it, because again, this is a very abbreviated description of what that prototypical staffing looks like. The next slide, I wanted to provide some sort of snippets from our apportionment report to show what these equations end up looking like for staffing. And I wanted to call out 4 specific areas. Again, these are just examples, but they are examples from our April apportionment document. So this is real data. School nurses, the state is funding us for a total of 11.92 positions at the state dollar value, okay, which is less than what we actually pay our nurses, but they're funding us for 11.92. Now, most individuals know that we have 17 school buildings in this district, meaning we're not even receiving enough of an allocation to put one underfunded nurse in each one of our buildings, okay? Now, if you look at the breakdown in nurses, you can see it says nurses, and then it says elementary FTE or abbreviated. We receive 6.6 nurses for elementary. We have 10 elementary schools, so we would need to pick 6 of them to get a nurse, and the other 4 just would not receive them, or the nurse is splitting the time. So which day are they not going to have any type of nursing support in that building? And please remember, nursing support can also be directed by an IEP if a student has a specific health condition. And so sometimes, even if we wanted to drive specifically off of the prototypical formula, which, you know, the state would like if districts did, we can't, because we have other federal obligations and state obligations, and we have the need to do right by our children, which is negated by the funding formula. So we have a school nurse for each one of our buildings, so we have more than 11.92. Teaching assistants. This is a paraeducator, so the state calls them teaching assistants. So these are what in my world we call BEA, or basic education dollar funded paraeducators. So you can see at the elementary level, again, we have 10 elementary buildings. We're getting 11.45 paraeducators for our allocation, meaning recess supervision, lunch supervision. Each building would have 1 FTE total to handle all students in that building, to get them through all recesses, all lunch. This would also include any type of push-in, pull-out support that's not being paid for with categorical dollars. So obviously that portion of the formula is significantly underfunded. Teaching assistants at middle school, we have 4 middle schools. Not even every middle school would receive any type of gen ed para support for our middle schools. High schools, if you gave each high school 1 and gave Henderson Bay a 0.3, that's all we would have left, and we would have utilized the entire funding formula for our paraeducators. Technology is one that I really like to point out, because the technology funding formula within the prototypical formula itself has not been changed since the late 1970s. Think back to the late 1970s and how much technology we utilized on a daily basis. It wasn't a lot, and that formula has not changed since. So we have 17 individuals dedicated to technology support across the district. So 17 individuals, which obviously is more than the 4.8. But we have 14,000 devices, or smart boards, or those type of items that need to be serviced by our 17 individuals. If we had 4 or even 5 staff trying to work on 14,000 devices, that is not going to lead to a great educational opportunity for our children. So again, that portion of the funding formula is grossly out of date. Principals. So we get allocations for middle school principals, elementary, high school principals. I wanted to really show middle school though, because middle school for our students, I mean, it can be a trying time. Like, you need some level of administrative support in our middle schools. So you can see that based upon our middle school enrollment, we are getting funded for 4.05 administrators. Great, each middle school gets a principal, but no assistant principal support being funded from the state. So right there, just in middle school alone, we're already gonna be 4 administrators over the prototypical funding formula. Now, so those are just some examples, you guys, and there's 100 pages, literally 100 pages in the apportionment document of these type of examples. And I wanted to just pinpoint some pieces of this. Now we're gonna dive into, what does this mean? Like, you just heard me state that they're funding a formula, but what does that mean when we state that they're funding a formula? I broke out all three of the classifications of our staff on how we get funded by the state. So you can see our certificated staff, our principals and administrative group, CAS, and our classified group. The funded FTE, we are getting funded for 447.55 teachers. We are getting funded for 32.19 administrators, either principals, central office, it doesn't matter. And we are getting funded for 138.94 classified individuals. 138.94 classified. This equates to just over 8 classified individuals per building in this entire district. And you may think 8, well, that would be plenty. We're talking your custodians, your mechanics, grounds, warehouse, your paraeducators, all of those positions, your office support, your bookkeeping, your accounting, all of those positions go into this, HR, payroll. I mean, the list goes on, and we get a total of 138 people. That is what's being funded by this state. So actual FTE for certificated, we have 578 positions in this district. We are over the state prototypical funding formula by just under 131 educators. Principals and admin, we are over by just under 8.9. And on the classified side, we are over by 202, okay, just under 203. Now you have to take it one step further. What are we being funded for by the state for each one of these positions? Because remember, they're not funding, back one, they're not actually funding the position and what we pay, what our costs are. They are funding the formula. The formula for Peninsula School District, we receive a base allocation, and this is the same for all school districts across the state. They'll receive their base allocation. Then, in addition to that base allocation, some may receive what's called a regionalization factor. We could sit here and talk semantics in regards to what the regionalization factor is actually based upon. For sake of time, I'm just going to say it's cost of living, okay? That doesn't necessarily cut it for a lot of the regionalization areas, and school districts will fight the fact that it's technically not cost of living, but whatever, we're gonna, sake of argument, say it's cost of living. So Peninsula School District receives 12% regionalization above the state minimum for each one of these positions. So they fund us at the base, then they give us an additional 12% on those prototypically funded positions. So on the 447, they will give us an extra 12%, not on the 578, but on the ones that they're actually funding. So we cover the difference of the 130. For certificated administrators, they're going to give us 130,000, and for classified staff, they're going to give us 62,000. And this is for each FTE that is prototypically funded. So the state then gives us a lump allocation for base salary. This does not include benefits. Okay, none of these numbers, in order to compare to apples, I did not include benefits. So we're receiving just under 40 million for our certificated staff, just over 5.2 million for our administrators, and 11.5 million for our classified staff. The district's actual costs this year, real-time numbers, and this isn't just to date, we run our expense through August, is in the next column. So that's our actual costs. The red, and you see red in each category, is our overage, okay? So that is the amount of money that the district is sort of ponying up to offset not only the unfunded positions, but the underfunded positions. Because our average teacher for their work year is gonna make just over 103,000, which is, and that's average, and that's obviously over the $88,000 the state is giving us, even with the regionalization factor. Therefore, we have a almost $20.9 million overage on that side. We have about $4.3 million overage on certificated administrators. We have about $11.8 million overage on classified staff. Now, you heard me say 12%, but if you're reading the fine lines, you see a 13% number in there. So back post McCleary, pre-McCleary, they had something called the staff mix ratio. When the state was funding teachers, the state would turn around and state, this is what teachers are going to be paid in the next year. That's pre-McCleary. Post McCleary, they did away with that salary schedule. They told all districts, go out and bargain your own wages, but this is what we're going to pay you. What they did is they took districts that had at least 50% of their staff over the state experience average, and they gave them an additional 4% experience factor. So districts like PSD received base, they received an additional 12, and then they also received an additional 4%. Now, when the district was bargaining the results of the McCleary decision, all of that was bargained into wages, because if they're stating that they're giving us an additional 4% because our staff are experienced, therefore we need to pay them more, it needs to go into the paychecks. Well, what ended up happening in 22-23 is legislatively they got together and said, okay, we're going to rebase the experience factor. Peninsula School District, you no longer qualify. Now, the issue was, when were they rebasing? They were rebasing right after COVID. A lot of school districts' experienced staff retired during COVID. Therefore, we had a momentary dip in experience within this district to where we fell less than 0.1% below the factor that would have allowed us to continue keeping that 4%. Okay? So, because the state was being really nice to us, instead of taking the full 4% in 1 year, which would have been a $4 million loss to us in that first year, they said, you want to know what? We're going to step you down. Okay, so they took us from 4% in 22-23. Last year, in 24-25, we got 2%. This year, we got 1%. 12% and 1% is the 13% you're looking up at there. But remember, I said step down. So next year, we receive 0%. Now, those revenues are already bargained into paychecks. We are not going to go back as a district and state, hey, the state changed this up, we want 4% back. Now, our staff, and you're going to see it now in this next slide, we have an experienced staff here in Peninsula School District. We retain staff, okay? So what you're looking at right here is, in my world, in union world, we call this a scattergram. So what you see on the left-hand side is our certificated salary schedule for 24-25. What you see on the right side is our scattergram. It's the number of educators being paid in each one of those cells. So in school district world, we talk about, in finance, we talk about what's called the lower right column. That is your highest paid cell. So our highest column in this district is for educators that have a master's degree plus 90 credits, clock hours, or a PhD. Okay, so we're talking staff that have advanced degrees. We have 322 of our certificated educators in that column alone. This is great for students. It means our students are being taught by very, very experienced staff and staff with advanced degree knowledge in their content area. This is good, okay? Now, one of the things in my world, what I have to track is the fact that you see in the two next columns, MA 45 to 89, so those are the credits, and a BA 90 to an MA plus 44. We have 118 staff sitting there in the BA 90 to MA 44, and we have 86 staff sitting in the column right next to it. In the next 2 to 3 years, all of those staff are going to be in the far, they're going to be in the far right column, because they receive clock hours and credits for continuing education. We are a school district. We are an educational entity. Our staff learned, and they receive financial compensation for the learning that they do year in and year out, okay? So as I trend and look at total costs out the door, that's one of the things I constantly need to take into consideration. What were the changes to our scattergram? How much movement are we seeing? What are the possibilities that, 118 educators are going to move from one column to the next in the next fiscal year? So we take that basis of information. We know that school districts, a lot of school districts, budgets are made up anywhere between 80 to, right now, sadly enough, 87% going to salaries and benefits alone. That is a lot of dollars going to salaries and benefits that are situated in contractual obligations. So when we're looking at that and we need to pony it back to the prototypical funding formula, what does that mean? And what does it mean for Peninsula School District? Okay, next slide. So, a lot of you guys are going to have seen this graphic from levy presentations here 2 years ago, okay? Because these were the graphics that we had created during that presentation. But it really speaks to these funding inequities that we're facing with the state right now. So again, if you've heard me say this, please bear with me. But funded versus unfunded positions. So blue people, so the state funds 64, this is all an example, hypothetical. The state funds 64.9 of the 73.2 staff at example high school. So just pretend it's any high school. 8.3 positions are completely unfunded. So the state is giving you $0 towards those positions. Let's say that, based upon average teacher salary, is costing the district $757,000. Now, you take that graphic against the reality of the situation that school districts are facing, which is on the next slide, which is funded versus unfunded and underfunded salaries and benefits. So, same example, the state funds 64.9% of the 73.2 staff at the example high school at approximately 65% of the PSD average pay. 8.3 of those positions are completely unfunded, we're receiving no dollars towards, and 35% of the salaries and benefits of all other funded positions are actually not funded by the state. That equates to another 22.7 positions that are now unfunded. So you see the little box with the half blue guy, he has some red legs, and the rest of the red people, okay, we just have to move it out. So now, when we're looking at the reality of the staffing situation, that formula right down there below is what we look at when we're determining level of funding for a specific building. Remember, all of that funding is driven by enrollment. So when enrollment decreases, I have more red people. Not more blue people, I have more red people. So that was a very, very brief explanation into prototypical staffing and the funding formula, but we're gonna build off of that information now at this point. So, where did we start? Okay, this right here was one of the first graphics that I had ran for this district. I don't go into an Excel sheet and create all this and hand enter numbers. I utilize forecasting software. You just have to know how to utilize forecasting software and you can get the exact same figures. And it's less likely to have human error. So when I started looking at this district's finances and I ran a few reports, I noticed very quickly that we were gonna have a problem. And we're talking literally, I hired in the month of July of 2022 and we realized in July of 2022 that we had an issue. Red doesn't normally constitute a good thing when you're looking at finances, okay? So that line item that says surplus or deficit, smack dab in the middle of that, red is deficit, okay? So you can see for that budget period for 22-23, we were over expending by approximately $5 million, which meant that we were gonna be dipping into our fund balance in order to basically make ends meet through the end of the year. That's not unheard of, and that is okay. Dipping into fund balance is not a horrible thing. You just need to have a plan on how you rectify the situation. You can't continually do that because eventually the checkbook runs out. Then you look at the next school year. This, where it says 24, would have been last school year, okay? So you can see now we're dipping in by almost $7 million. So had we not done anything in 22-23, my first year here, we would have ended last year with just over a 1% fund balance, $1.8 million. Payroll each month is $10 million. Now, what that says is that we would have started the year, come September, I wouldn't have been able to make payroll. People would not have gotten paid. We would have been in binding conditions. This district would have been bankrupt, for lack of better terms. Okay, and we're gonna go into binding conditions here in a little bit to provide some more insight on that. Then you see the next column, the 25 column, that is this year right now. Okay, this year right now, we would not have had a financially solvent district. This district would have had negative $4.8 million. Okay, now take into consideration, that was not adding any additional staff, any curricular adoption needs, any type of programmatic needs, any type of increases to liability insurance. It was status quo. If we had simply retained the number of staff that we had, provided 0 raises, and just continued to put our head in the sand, that is where we would have been. We would have been bankrupt. Now, you hear in the news about a lot of districts across Washington state. They're currently there. They're currently where we were back in 22-23. Unfortunately, though, some of them waited for the state legislature to bail them out. Surprisingly enough, legislature did not bail them out now, so now they're coming forward with formal RIFs, and they're in binding conditions with the state because they're financially insolvent, okay? So that is where we were. That is what we are coming from right now. This is our past, and you have to learn from your past. The next graphic, let's say someone looks at all these numbers and they're like, there's too much information on this. The next graphic is very simplistic. All that is a fund balance trend. You peak during COVID in 2019, and then you drop down to where in fiscal year 24, you're insolvent. And this year, you don't have a district. So it's a simplistic trend. Now, one of the things to note about this one, and a lot of you have already heard me state this, is 2019. Why did Peninsula School District hit the, what's called the ESSER cliff prior to surrounding districts? Well, Peninsula School Districts received ESSER funding, just like other school districts across the state did. They received ESSER funding based upon the Title I federal funding formula. The Title I federal funding formula ties funding to poverty percentages and demographics within a school district. Peninsula School District is not considered a poverty-riddled school district as a whole. Average poverty percentage is approximately 20%. I'm not talking about any specific school. That's not how ESSER funds were distributed. I'm talking about poverty percentage of the district as a whole. So because we did not meet the definitions of a high poverty school district, we received limited ESSER funds. Our district received $4 million during that COVID time period through multiple different ESSER packages. School districts twice our size, okay, 9,000, school district 18,000, received $100 million in ESSER funding. $100 million to face the exact same COVID situations and issues and problems that this school district was facing, and they received $100 million and we received $4 million. So what did Peninsula School District have to do? They had to rely on their fund balance to continue providing equitable education to kids. So they utilized their fund balance to do so and then hit the ESSER cliff. Those other school districts have now run out of their ESSER funds, or they've been taken back by the feds because they couldn't spend $100 million during that time frame. And now they're hitting that same cliff that we ourselves had hit previously. Okay, so all of that to be said, well, what does that mean for us now? Okay, Ashley, you just said we right-sized in 2022 and 2023, and we fixed our financial situation. Why are we hearing about, principal shifts or staff shifts, in the community and reductions? Well, that's where we get into this. So, this year's budget, our budget revenues by source. About 78% of our overall budget comes from the state. That shouldn't be a significant surprise. Aside from the fact that the state said we're fully funded, and 78% is not 100, so there's a little bit of a deficit there, but whatever. 19.2% comes from local levy, okay? So 19.2% of our overall operating income is coming from our community, our taxpayers. Look at our federal slice. We're getting 3.2% of our revenues coming through the feds. Why is that? Because we are not a high poverty school district and we are not a diverse school district. The federal government ponies up dollars based upon your poverty percentage and your diversity. And since we don't have high levels of either of that, we receive significantly less federal funds than like-sized districts. So that's going to be important. So keep that in mind as we go forward because, again, you've been hearing about cuts to federal revenues. This is where it becomes a benefit to not be relying on federal revenues to balance your budget. Okay, this is just a simple graphic. We're gonna do just a quick math equation here, okay? So the green box, compared to the same period, total revenues are $2.5 million higher than previous year. Great, awesome. We are receiving $2.5 million more right now, because this is month-end March, we are receiving $2.5 million more than we had received by March of 24. That is great. Look at the yellow box. We have $6.2 million more in expenditures than we did at this point last year. So 2.5 million in additional revenues, $6.2 million in more expenditures. The blue box, our fund balance is $50,000 more than this point last year. Okay, so $2.5 million in revenue minus $6.2 million in expenditures leaves you with a negative number. Add 50,000 to it because that's a positive number, okay? And where does that leave us? That leaves us where this next graphic is. Look at the arrow. So this, for those that love watching the monthly board presentations, Logan, I know you're probably watching this right now. Look at this number, okay? We are currently $5.5 million expenditures over revenues. So we have spent 5.5 million more than what we have brought in to date, which means we're relying on fund balance in order to pay the bills. Now, again, that's not a bad thing because you already heard me say you plan for it, okay? So you plan to pull down fund balance in order to make equitable distribution for programming and revenues and everything across the board. You can do that here and again. You can't do it forever. So we bolstered our fund balance in order to rely on it this year. It was all planned, okay? So I'm not stating that, oh, well, the district is over expending expenditures and hence the reason we're negative. No, this is all part of the budget because ultimately you can look over at the right-hand column and it shows you year-to-date percentage of budget. Okay, so it's all budgeted. We budgeted to spend down our fund balance, but it's problematic if that's occurring year after year because eventually you don't have a fund balance to be able to rely on in those situations. The next slide shows my favorite graph that I present on each month, and this is just our general fund balance summary. What I look for is I want my line to follow the trend. Current year is the dark blue line. So I expect to drop in the month of September because of course the state's gonna give you less money once school starts. Then you're going to peak in October and you're gonna peak in April because those are property tax collection months. You always go down after a property tax collection month because the state provides less of your state apportionment in the month following a property tax collection month because they want you to rely on property taxes to pay the bills, not on state dollars, because the state then gets to hold those dollars and collect interest on them. Then you see that as you get towards July and August, you start to peak again. That's an interesting concept because we know that in July and August, kids aren't in school. So why are our revenues peaking during the months of July and August? Well, it's because of the state legislature and the state budget doing just what they did this year through the legislative process, which is cost shifting. I mean, it's technically smart from a budgetary financial standpoint, but they are cost shifting their expenses into a future year. So their biennium and their fiscal year ends June 30th. So they know they have all of these IOUs out to the district through these apportionment dollars. So they know that they owe us money. So what they do through the legislative process is say, hey, we're going to take this additional 1.5% that we're giving you over the course of the school year, we're going to push it into the months of July and August. Because if they push it into July and August, they just hit their next fiscal year, but it's still within our fiscal year, so they're not breaking any laws. But our kids aren't in the school in July and August. My costs I incur during the course of the school year. So now school districts are going to be receiving 25% of their total state allocation during the months of July and August. So for us, we receive approximately $100 million from the state. They are going to keep $25 million of it until the months of July and August after the school year has ended, then they will give it back to us. What this causes for school districts is cash flow issues. I can balance a budget knowing that the money's coming in July and August. I can't pay bills in December with an IOU for the end of our fiscal year. So what we have to be responsible for and really manage is, what does our cash flow look like across the year? At any given point, am I going to have enough money in the bank in order to pay not only payroll of approximately $10 million, but another couple million dollars a month in overhead, electricity, fuel, tires, bus engines, all of those pieces. So we have to ensure that we're watching our cash flow analysis to make sure that we're going to be able to make ends meet through each of those months. So again, that's another area where the state legislature has cost shifted something towards their benefit, but it's negatively impacting school districts. Now, we, Peninsula School District, are not having cash flow issues, okay? We have managed that because of all of the work that we're doing towards fiscal responsibility so that we don't end up in that situation. Other school districts across the state, what it's causing is them to have to borrow against themselves. They have to borrow against their capital projects fund. They have to go out there for non-voted debt in order to make payroll. They go out for non-voted debt. They're now paying it back with interest in order to balance the books once again. So all they're doing is shifting their issue to further down the road because eventually they're going to have to pay it back. So right now, that's a huge talk in the business world, is just the ability for districts to stay financially solvent and face these cash flow situations that are being caused by us not receiving our revenues at the time that they're being earned. Now, next slide. So revenues for our district, the vast majority of them are based upon enrollment. So how is our current enrollment playing into this entire situation? So what you're seeing here is our current enrollment, and we're talking current as of April. Our current enrollment is 8,745 FTE, full-time equivalent students. So I'm not talking head count, I'm talking what we're being funded based upon, which is full-time equivalent. We have 514 students less than we did 5 years ago, 514 students. We have declining enrollment at approximately 3%. We're seeing that decline. We are going to continue declining through 2030. That's not specific to Peninsula School District. It's not only a statewide trend, it's also a nationwide trend. It's lower birth rates, and we are going to continue facing that. So we need to ensure that as we're budgeting, we ensure that we're very conservative in regards to our enrollment estimates, because one of the things that has gotten districts in trouble in the last 2 years is over budgeting enrollment, because the state then pays you your revenues based upon your budgeted enrollment. And then come January, they true up that revenue. And if you over budgeted, you're now paying it back to the state. And that can sometimes be a significant chunk of change all at once. If some of you guys remember back to our budget presentation I gave about a year ago, we had budgeted to have more students than what actually showed up. But what I had done is put the $2 million associated with that increase of enrollment, just think about it like putting it into a separate account. We didn't budget against it. We didn't staff against it. We waited for the kids to show up. When the kids didn't show up, awesome, no harm, no foul. There was no costs against it, so we didn't have to dip into fund balance, pay anything back that we had already spent. But our enrollment that is trending down is problematic. Now we start looking at where are these trends coming from? Where is our enrollment dropping? Elementary, which makes sense. Lower birth rates. They start at the lowest grade level, okay? And then you're going to naturally see those low birth rates cycle through. Eventually it will be middle school and it will be high school, and you'll see your trend reverse, okay? So right now we're seeing some growth at middle school, 28 kids. We're seeing some growth at high school, approximately 129 kids. Elementary, we're losing almost 200 students. And this isn't a hypothetical. You're gonna see I threw all my enrollment assumptions in there in these next two slides I'm gonna go through you with. This is based upon truly just rolling up data. So right now we have a preliminary net loss of enrollment of 37 FTE. 37 FTE may not seem like a lot, but when you're also facing other revenue downturns, it is actually significant, because what we need to be seeing is enrollment increases. If you go to the next slide, we're going to walk through two slides of what goes into an enrollment assumption. So we use a roll-up enrollment trend. So again, we take our kindergartners that we had this year, we're going to put them in first grade. We're going to put our first graders into second graders all the way through the system. So again, we saw the elementary decrease of 194 students. We have a large fifth grade class that's leaving elementary and going into middle school as sixth graders. So that's why we're seeing a middle school increase of 28. Had it not been for that large fifth grade class, we would be seeing a reduction right now in middle school. High school, we're gonna see an increase of approximately 129. We do have a large incoming ninth grade class into that group. We have a net loss of 37. Our total anticipated enrollment for 25-26 is 8,653. Again, it's the beginning of May. This is preliminary. We're looking at registrations. I hope to see this number grow. In order to see that number grow, there has to be individuals moving into the district, because this is counting everyone in our system currently. We utilize our February enrollment for the trend. We utilize our February enrollment for the trend because that tends to be your most accurate month when you're comparing it to what's called your AAFTE, your annual average FTE. So if you use your October count tends to be your highest enrollment month. That will skew your data for the rest of the year. You want to use what your average is. February tends to be what the closest number to your average. The rest of the assumptions go into keeping kindergarten. Can you go to the next one? Yep. Keeping kindergarten and transitional kindergarten stagnant, so basically stable, no increase. Rolling up fifth grade to feeder middle schools, rolling up eighth grade to feeder high schools. Pioneer Elementary was split evenly between all four middles. Henderson Bay remains stable. Your 10th and 11th grade roll-ups were reduced by projected Running Start enrollment. Running Start enrollment is not counted by us from a funding purpose. The community college, we get the funding for it, and then we have to give it to the community college, all but like 7% of it, which just covers overhead for processing invoices and such. High school does not include full-time Running Start, but it does include partial FTE Running Start, as in if one of our students is taking, let's say, a civics class at the local community college, but all the rest of their classes are within the district, that's considered a partial FTE. So we did include partial FTE numbers in our roll-up. So that's all the data that goes into how we create our enrollment assumptions. Back in the day, districts used to contract with demographers to come in, put out a bunch of survey data, look at birth rates, look at statewide trends, nationwide trends. One of the things that we found post-COVID is the trends aren't adding up anymore. So COVID created a blip in the system that has now restarted our ability to really evaluate enrollment trends across districts, not just in PSD, but elsewhere. So then we take all of that information, okay? So you just heard how we're being funded, where the funding sources are coming from, where we currently are, how we're trending, what our enrollment is doing. What if we were just to sit here and be like, you wanna know what? It's fine. It's fine, we're not gonna do anything. We're just status quo. We're just gonna continue as is and hope for the best, okay? Because there are some districts that are doing that, okay? So what if we just hope for the best? Well, this is what happens when we hope for the best, okay? So this is a projected financial summary that goes between current year, 2025, that's the first set of bar graphs, to 2030. The blue bar is our revenue amount. Green bar is our expense amount. You can see in every single year, this year included, that our expenses will exceed our revenues. And the yellow line is your fund balance, okay? So right now, we're solid. Yes, we're spending down on fund balance, but we anticipated. But let's say we didn't do any adjustments to staffing at all. We're just going to keep everyone. We're going to post all open positions. We're not going to do any adjustments. Okay, this is where we are in 2026. Sorry, back one. Okay, this is where we're going to be in 2026. You see now that that yellow bar is almost at zero. Okay, we have now exhausted our fund balance in order to basically pay the bills. Now, what you're going to see in future slides is binding conditions is a 3-year outlook. As in, if we chose to do nothing right now, I need to be calling the state and saying, hey, we're not going to be financially solvent because our financial trend is we are bankrupt. When you look at 2027, though, you're going to see that it drops significantly. Why? Our levy expires, okay? And so individuals will say, okay, well, don't pass a levy, okay? This is then what happens, is we don't have the levy to rely on. We're now even further in the hole. Let's say we run the levy in 2026. 2026 is the last calendar year for our current educational programs and operations levy. Let's say we run it and we pass, but we still don't do anything with any changes in staffing. That yellow line is still going to be right under zero, okay? We cannot bring in enough levy dollars to sustain current operations. One, because we don't feel that it's fiscally prudent to turn around and tax the community at unbelievably high rates. But in addition to that, we need to be responsible with our dollars. We need to be responsible with our state dollars, our federal dollars, and our local dollars. And it's about balancing all of those and the needs of our community and ensuring that we're just asking for what we need in order to get by, not to turn around and bolster fund balance or do anything like that. So ultimately, if we do not do anything, and even if we were to pass another EP&O levy in 2026, we are still going into binding conditions, okay? Another key part of this that I am transparently speaking about, and I have said at other board meetings, this work is not one-time work. I mean, if it was one-time work, you wouldn't necessarily need me doing what I do, because I could just fix it all and leave and you guys would be fine forever. But ultimately, it's about looking at the revenues, looking at the expenditures, looking at where our trends are, where birth rates are going, where the enrollment is coming from, where are we losing enrollment, all of those pieces, and then being able to make decisions at this point in every single school year regarding what are we doing with staffing. If the enrollment is declining, if revenues are declining, how do you manage paying staff when we are not receiving enough money from the state to fully pay those staff? Now, for those individuals that really like fiscal terminology and really getting into the nitty and gritty of finances, I put this next slide in for you, okay? I'm not going to read it, but ultimately, if you really want to know what our financial data looks like and what our unfavorable deficit condition would look like, read through these bullet points, okay? So when I trend data out and I'm looking at what either our gains or losses are going to be over specific periods based upon what our known or unpredictable expenses and revenues are going to be, this is what we come down to. So again, not going to read it. Logan, I know you'll enjoy reading it and getting some insight from all of that. But for those of you who like the fiscal type language, go ahead and read through this. This explains that chart that I was just discussing. Okay, so you've heard me say a lot of information regarding binding conditions or bankruptcy in school districts. So it's financial insolvency in school districts, otherwise known as binding conditions. So what does that mean? So financial, don't look at the word that says of, the second to last word, it's supposed to say or. But financial insolvency is a situation where a school district is unable to meet its financial obligations, leading to deficit general fund balance within 3 years or less. In private world, that's bankruptcy. Okay, we can't afford to pay our bills. Now, 3 years, they're looking at a 3-year trend, as in it's very important for us to do this, because if we are not doing the necessary work in order to continually right-size our budget, then we are on the table for binding conditions. What does binding conditions mean? So steps to navigating binding conditions. To be placed on binding conditions, a district must end the year with a negative fund balance or need to budget receivables collected in the future to balance its budget. Remember when I just said that the state pushed money into their next biennium? We're not allowed to do that. The state can do it, we are not allowed to do it. If we do it, we're in binding conditions, okay? In such a situation, the district will go into binding conditions. So if the binding conditions result in the district becoming solvent, awesome, great, you're out of binding conditions year 1. If not, the district enters year 2 of binding conditions. If you can achieve solvency and meet any other requirements that the state has given you, because the state is now governing your school district, much more so than they normally do, then you can exit binding conditions. But if after the second year the district is not solvent, then what ends up happening is they convene a financial oversight committee that's going to come in and they are going to govern the school district's hirings, RIFs, salary, wages, contract negotiations. All of that is going to be governed by this financial oversight committee. So in layman's terms, the administration of binding conditions, an ESD fiscal officer, so an educational service district fiscal officer, is going to be assigned as an administrator for the school district. Jenny, can you move to the next one? Thank you. So what this essentially does is removes operational authority from the superintendent and from the CFO. It doesn't transfer to anyone, though, in the school district. It transfers to the state, okay? So the state will be coming in telling us what curriculum to adopt, what checks to pay, what to bargain, okay? The state will be the one dictating all of that. This administrator serves as the primary financial consultant to the school district. The school district will then have limited authority to ensure compliance with binding conditions only, as in, here's your list of rules of what you can and cannot do. The only decisions you can make are outlined in this piece of paper. Most districts resolve their financial situation in 1 to 2 years with the state. I mean, correct, okay? Because they come in, they clean house, they do what they feel is necessary for the school district outside of what our strategic plan is or what PSD's goals are or anything like that. That's not part of the equation. At the end of the day, what's part of the equation is revenues, expenditures, fund balance. That is it. And that's how these decisions then are made. Okay, so then you get all of that information, and then you're like, but wait, I know that you receive categorical funding. And by categorical funding, I'm talking about specific grants or allocations, funding allocations for specific earmarked programs. So where does all of that start? Well, it starts with our poverty percentage by building. Okay, so what we receive as far as categorical funds is driven by our poverty percentage. So there's our schools, and you see our 25-26 final free and reduced price lunch, FRPL percent. You see our 3-year average. This is not a sheet put together by me. The link below, if anyone wants to look at the full data in other school districts or anything like that, is below. So then what they do is they say, okay, which one of your school buildings are considered high poverty? So you see that we have one yes. That yes is Evergreen Elementary, and it is because they are over they are over 50.0% of a poverty threshold through the free and reduced price lunch application. So Evergreen is considered a high poverty school pursuant to state regulations, not federal, because federal would require them to be at 70, but per the state, they are considered high poverty. So in the next column, you see eligible for LAP high poverty funding in the 25-26 school year. And you see Evergreen is the only one that has a yes marked, because Evergreen is considered high poverty per the state. None of our other school buildings are, therefore we do not receive any type of enhanced high poverty funding for those buildings. So obviously we're receiving more categorical funding than just LAP high poverty. So what does that look like for our buildings receiving these categorical dollars? Next slide. Okay, so we receive limited categorical dollars that are tied to poverty percentages, because our poverty percentages are lower here than both statewide averages and nationwide averages. But we do receive our LAP, so our Learning Assistant Program funding, our Title I funding, and our Highly Capable funding. Highly Capable is tied to the number of students that end up qualifying. So here is a chart. This is real life data from right now in 24-25, showing the level of additional support positions that are in buildings based upon their categorical funding. And it also includes what their Title I allocation is. Their Title I allocation does not make a school a title school per federal standards. They would need to be set over 75% poverty to be considered an actual Title I school. That doesn't mean that the district doesn't receive title funding. We do receive title funding. We then have to rank order our schools based upon achievement data, based upon poverty percentage, and then we have to distribute whatever title funds we are receiving through an equitable distribution method through those rank ordered schools until you run out of funds to distribute. So you can see that we have 4 of those buildings receiving a financial Title I allocation based upon poverty percentages, based upon achievement data. And you have some notes down there. Now, what I will say is that Vaughn, the state made a little bit of a boo-boo at the beginning of the year and was giving us high poverty dollars for Vaughn. They did not catch the data inequity in time, so they allowed us to keep the funds for this year versus taking it back, but they told us, hey, Vaughn didn't qualify, that was an error, so you're not gonna receive it next year. Okay, so there's a little mark down there in regards to that. In addition to that though, the title allocations, we don't know if we're receiving title at this point, and you're gonna see some more information in a future slide. So right now, we cannot responsibly staff with title funding when I have received $0 of an allocation. What a school district risks by staffing individuals with federal funds that do not exist yet is what's called the supplement versus supplant compliance issue. So let's say I turned around and I kept all of our funding and all of our positions funded exactly the same way, and I was like, you want to know what, the federal government, they're going to come through. They're going to come through, they're going to fund us exactly how they have been. And then they don't, okay? I can't code them to the federal program code because the dollars don't exist, so I need to move it somewhere else. If I move that position to a state funding code or a local levy funding code, I can never again, ever pay for that position with federal funds, because then you are considered supplanting with federal dollars versus supplementing your program. So if you do that and the money does not come through, we are stuck now carrying on that financial piece from here on out. Okay, and so we did make the decision to not fund the position with title dollars that we do not know if we are going to receive. Because had we done that, very likely I would have had to put those positions into levy, and that's where they would have had to live for the duration, okay? So then we get into, well, what about CTE? So career and technical education funding. Next slide. Okay, so CTE funding is earmarked enhanced funding to be used on grades 7th through 12th So again, you hear middle school CTE or high school CTE, but earlier on in the presentation, you saw that 6th grade is not considered part of the prototypical middle school. So we do not receive CTE funds for 6th graders, even though they're in our middle schools. Therefore, if you have a CTE class taught by a CTE instructor and you have 6th graders in there, we cannot count that enrollment for the enhanced funding, okay? We have to remove those. So this enhanced funding includes the Aviation Academy, okay? So CTE, and when I say earmarked, I mean the fact that the funds cannot be used for anything besides CTE program, salaries, and supplies. So it has to be 7th through 12th grade. It needs to be salaries of individuals that have all the appropriate endorsements for their CTE areas. And we can purchase supplies for the classroom. We can do some professional development for CTE teachers. But that CTE funding can only be utilized in those areas. In addition to CTE funds, though, the Aviation Academy is being supported by competitive categorical grants secured by our CTE team. So our CTE team has been writing grants left and right, and you're going to see on the right-hand side a bunch of different variable grant amounts that we've received. Now, not all of those are for the aviation program. You're going to see one that's listed in there for NJROTC and for AP Comp Science and Health Sciences and such. But ultimately, we're writing those grants in order to secure additional funding, and a good chunk of these are then going to help offset startup costs associated with the Aviation Academy. These grants can't simply be used on other programs across the district. You have to write a competitive grant application that matches the requirements listed by the grantor, and you have to spend the funds then in alignment with that, and we are audited based upon that. Okay, so funding impacts for 25 and 26. So this is for next school year. So again, you've just heard a ton of information of this is where we're at, this is where we are, this is where we're trending. What does all that mean when we're at the table, you know, behind the scenes, and we're having to make those really difficult decisions of what are we going to be able to do to ensure that we can still have competitive programming for students, while still ensuring that we're going to be financially solvent and be able to make payroll and pay our bills and not be taken over by the state. So, federal funding impacts. This is something that we've been looking at all year long. Title I, we received $400,000 this year. I have a completely unknown impact. Am I going to receive it? Am I not going to receive it? Am I going to receive $200,000? I have no idea. I did hear that they've changed the funding formula at the federal level, okay? So we have been told that the federal budget included funding for Title I, and it included funding for IDEA, so special education, federal special education. Awesome. But then you followed up with, but you changed the funding formula. What does that mean? Does it mean that we receive more? Does it mean that we receive less? If they're tying it to poverty, we have no idea, right? So completely unknown as of right now. What we have received notification of is Title II, which is, it's a federal grant, but it's utilized for professional development, specifically for teachers. That's gone. They didn't fund it. So that's $350,000 that we had been receiving year after year, as far back as I can think, that we now no longer have. So when we're talking about curriculum adoptions, okay, and we need to train our staff so that they're competent in the classroom and understand the new curriculum and feel comfortable leading our kids through new curriculum, the funding source that we thought we would have available to help pay for it is now gone as of right now, okay? So other miscellaneous federal dollars, there's other grant dollars that we receive in small little chunks. Who knows? We don't know if we will get them, if we will not get them. Right now, what's happening is OSPI is emailing business managers saying, hey, normally we would have had the funding by now, or at least the allocations. We don't. We hope for the best. Please hope for the best as well, and just build a budget not knowing whether or not you're getting it. So again, we would have normally already received our federal allocations. It's May 6th. School districts, smaller school districts, they're required to have a budget here in July. And they still don't even know whether or not they're going to have federal funding. Contracts are due to staff by May 15th. And again, we don't know whether or not we're going to have our federal funding. So school districts are having to make on-the-cuff decisions and hope for the best, or make decision to not fund staff with the federal funds that they have not been told that they're going to receive yet. The one area where I can say with a fairly decent amount of confidence is we're going to receive our food service revenue, okay? So that's $1.5 million of that 3.2% that we should be able to receive, okay? That's the only piece right now from a federal side that I have any certainty that we will be receiving. So then you say, okay, well, federal, it's doom and gloom. State has to look better, right? So go to the state. Guess what? It doesn't look better. And I know that it's shocking, especially with the amount of legislative updates we gave over the legislative season. But regardless of the amount of advocacy from our own school board, our superintendent, our students, superintendents and students and school boards across the state, they didn't, the state legislature did not come through. They did not honor what was being requested really at any level. So experience factor, you heard me talk about that. That's that remaining percent that we have. That's gone. So that's 600,000. Enrollment loss, that's another 600,000. Liability insurance increase. Simply because it's $500,000, I'm throwing it on here because $500,000 is a lot of people. Salary and benefit increases. These are wages that are owed, increases, bargained wages that are owed next year, okay? We have a $3 million increase. Net impact with no other expense increases, assuming fuel stays exactly the same cost, propane, electricity, we don't throw out an extra piece of garbage, we have no other increase in costs. I'm already at a negative $4.7 million of revenue from where I am right now. So you're like, okay, but the state legislature has to have done something positive. They did. They gave us IPD, so implicit price deflator, so basically cost of living adjustment. Now, that adjustment is only for prototypically staffed employees. Districts tend to not pick and choose which staff get IPD, so they either give it to all of them or find another avenue to bargain it. But they don't say, hey, we have 350 prototypically staffed individuals. These 350 people are going to get a raise. These aren't, okay? So the dollar value that we're getting for IPD doesn't actually cover the cost of IPD across the district. They did increase, put in an increase for our material, supplies, and operating costs, nowhere near the increase that was requested, or in all reality, that is necessary for school districts to continue to stay financially solvent. And they also then did a very, very minimal increase to special education, especially based upon where they had started. So our total positive impact right now from the legislative session is $2 million. Okay, and you guys, I was being generous with the $2 million. So I just wanted a round number. I'm going to call it 2 million. So negative 4.7 million. I have 2 million of positive. Where does that leave me? It leaves me with negative $2.7 million going into next school year over where we are right now. Like, I know that we will have reduced revenues of that value. So when I am sitting here trying to determine how do we make up that $2.7 million deficit, because as you saw on prior slides, we're utilizing our fund balance to sort of stay ahead right now, okay? So negative 2.7 million. So where does that come into for staffing? Okay, staffing impacts. Now you saw the loss of revenues. With the loss of revenues, I went all the way back to 22-23, and I took retirements, resignations, and non-renewals of staff going back to from 22-23, 23-24, 24-25, 25-26. Our total retirements, resignations, or non-renewals for this upcoming school year, 25-26, is at 34, okay? This right here, this trend shows, it just naturally shows an increase in retention, okay? So our retention right now is about 91, a little over 91%. Now, you see the number go from big to small in the first column. Look at the number right next to it. You have just a converse situation occurring. So involuntary teacher placement, when you shift teachers to backfill openings so you don't have to post, okay? Teachers have certificates, they are endorsed. A lot of teachers, especially in this district, they're endorsed in a lot of areas. They have a lot of degrees, they have a lot of certificates, okay? So you start in a year where you had 87 retirements, resignations, and non-renewals. We had to involuntarily transfer 10 certificated individuals. Then you go all the way through to the situation we have right now, which is we have 34 retirements, resignations, non-renewal in total, and we have 24 involuntary teacher placements. What does that mean? It doesn't mean they're losing their job. It doesn't mean that they're taking a cut in pay. It means that their teaching assignment from this year to next year may look different. Their building location from this year to next year may look different, but they have positions within this school district, okay? So then you look at involuntary principal placement. So in 22-23, we had 0 individuals that were involuntarily placed. Then you go into 23-24, we had 3. 24-25, we had 7. For 25-26, we've had 9. Now, a lot of people would say, hey, wait a sec, you guys put out a communication that you guys are, starting this process. In prior years, the way our involuntary principal placement occurs, it's in alignment with the Principals Association agreement, but when we had late attrition, so a late retirement or a resignation, there's a trickle effect, okay? If you don't have enough time to post, get applicants, interview, all of that, you start tapping. You look at your candidate pool, you look at your principals. What individual is ready for that next step? And you say, hey, it's your turn. Like, do you want this position? Okay, and that is what has happened in 23-24, 24-25. In 25-26, instead of waiting for that natural attrition, instead of waiting for that last minute movement, it's let's be proactive, let's just really align the development of our principal group to future growth goals, to the work that they're doing with AWSP, to all of those pieces, and we're going to proactively make the movements all at once. Okay, so you're seeing all the data for prior years for that. Now, some individuals would say, well, we don't want you to involuntarily move teachers, just keep them where they are. Well, then what that means is I need to backfill those openings. So if I just backfill those 24 positions, that's gonna be a $3.4 million base salary increase. Now, you already saw we had negative revenues. I would be increasing our expenses by another 3.4 million for base salary alone, not even including benefits. And remember, we're already 130 educators over the prototypical funding formula. So it's not like we're gonna receive any funding for those 24 educators from the state. So 100% of the cost is on the district. Also, out of the 24 involuntary teacher placements, 2 educators had experience in excess of 20 years. So 2 out of the 24 that were displaced. One displacement of one of those individuals over 20 years was due to a cut in the title funding, which caused us to collapse the program that all 4 of these positions were held in, okay? So when you collapse the program, the decision was made to collapse it as a whole until we determine whether or not we're going to receive title funding again. The other one was due to a split high school need for a specific content area, Spanish. Okay, so when you're looking at seniority, when you're looking at certifications and endorsements, especially in high school, and we have split needs amongst buildings, sometimes you have to have certificated instructors split their time in 2 different buildings. And so that was the other individual that was impacted. So staff movement, staff involuntary moves this year occurred from secondary to elementary. Next slide. Okay, so we had more attrition in elementary this year. I had about 13 individuals retire or resign from elementary. Now, you may be thinking, awesome, you had 194 student enrollment decline in elementary, so why are you having to backfill positions. We're not backfilling all of them. We do have to backfill some of them. Another component was the fact that as a district, we made a commitment to our bargaining group for our teachers, in the sense that our elementary classes over the course of the last few years, because we're balancing budget, our 4th and 5th grade classes have been starting in overload. Okay, so they're starting over the contractual class size for 4th and 5th grade. So what we wanted to do was be really mindful not to put our elementary schools in that position for a 3rd year in a row. So I needed to increase our elementary FTE in 5 of our buildings in order to add a certificated FTE in their building to bring down those class sizes so that they could start the year and not be in overload at those grade levels. We need to move to backfill these open positions, because if we do not do that, again, our costs are going to increase. We did prioritize elementary lower class sizes due to what elementary class sizes have looked like over the last several years. We utilize our collective bargaining agreement language and our bargain standard operating procedures to guide staff movement. This is collaborative work with the union. I work hand in hand with Carol. Carol lets us know, hey, you may have overlooked this specific area, and we're like, you're right, we did. So then we go back to that one, but we work hand in hand with it. So then from there, we look at elementary specialist staffing. So what you are seeing from 24-25 to 25-26 is a reduction overall in elementary specialist staffing. What I did do in the 25-26 area is put the enrollment of each building for next year and what they're looking at. Specialist staffing is driven by enrollment. Specialists provide basically that planning time for teachers. So when a class is in, whether it's PE or music or STEM, whatever it happens to be, that is when our teachers are receiving their contractual planning time in order to do the rest of the pieces of their job, grading, curricular development, all of those pieces. And so if we have specialist FTE that's 3, 4, 5.0 FTE in a building that has 260, 70 kids, those kids are going to need to be seeing those specialists every single day in order to make up that FTE percentage at that building, meaning less instructional time for core academics in the classroom as well. So what you are seeing is as enrollment decreases, you see less specialist time in that building. In our smaller elementary schools, we have 10 classes, 2 per grade level. And so when you have 10 classes and you have, 3 different specialist sections and they're rotating through them and a specialist is seeing 6 classes a day, every other day they're going to be in those specialist areas. So that's a consideration that we need to be thinking about to ensure that they're also receiving instructional minutes in ELA, in math, in all of the other areas. Now, STEM is in and will be in every single one of our buildings next year. So there was no building in which STEM was taken away, okay? Now, we did receive reductions in specialist FTE in STEM in some buildings. When you're seeing, like Minter Creek, for example, Minter Creek is like, there will be STEM. STEM is, they've already gone through the process of scheduling at the building. The STEM specialist is going to be provided for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade because that's where testing occurs for science. But kindergarten 1st and 2nd will be receiving instruction through their STEM Scopes curriculum in the classroom. Vaughan will have a STEM specialist, but their schedule is still pending. So the building leadership team, as well as the building administrator, they do some work regarding what their specialist schedule is going to look like for the following year. So that work is still being done at the building level. Jenny, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so specialist staffing is dependent on enrollment and our collective bargaining agreement. All elementary schools have PE, they have music classes taught by specialists. A school may have enough enrollment for additional specialist staffing. we build the specialist assignments with consideration given to limit travel between buildings for our teachers, okay? That is something that we do need to consider. If we have teachers traveling during the academic day, they can't serve students while they're actively traveling. So then some individuals say, okay, well then just have them be in the building, let's say Monday, Tuesday, not Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Well, then you start dealing with problematic issues with getting teachers their appropriate numbers of plans. So again, art or STEM specialists are designed to supplement the teacher's instruction, not be the only instruction in these areas. All K-5 educators do have STEM Scopes curriculum, and then there's the information regarding STEM for Minner Creek and for Vaughan. So you guys listened to me for a very long time. Thank you so much. Questions? Yes, I apologize. I just thought it was necessary. And
Thank you. That was well done. As you know, I like listening to financial.
I know, I'm waiting for your question.
You said
David.
Logan, but you didn't say my name. So,
You're right.
So I appreciate that. I'll get over it. First, I want to applaud you for the relationship that you've established with the PEA and the various marketing units to help navigate the school district over the past couple of years. I know that last year there were quite a few school districts across the state that were in binding conditions or facing binding conditions. Some of them for mismanagement of ESSER funds, or maybe not know how to spend the ESSER funds, and they didn't get guidance from the state. Poor financial oversight, period. And some for such as Mukilteo dual levy failures. You know, so this year, once again, we just saw back in February, and then again last 2 weeks ago, several school districts across the state failed their APO levy and their bonds. And so they're now going to be facing some pretty dire financial situations that they go through. So I think it's really important that people that are watching online, or because this was a long, complex conversation, that they don't take anything that you said about our school district out of context, because you use the word bankruptcy and insolvent and by a lot.
Yeah.
But that's not our school district.
Nope.
We have someone like you that is expert in keeping us out of that. But I think someone could easily take a snippet of what you said and run with it the wrong way. And so hopefully people don't do that. But as we face our own levy, conversation coming up soon in our school district, could you just touch a little bit? There's a lot of anger, as you mentioned at the beginning, around the state, and especially now against the state legislature for a lot of the decisions that our state legislature made, some on related to schools. And you see people, unfortunately, that are cheering these levy failures for these schools, which I don't know if they understand the ramifications of those failures. So as we look to the future for our own levy coming up, which is around the corner, could you just touch base on the impact of failing the EP&O levy, and not just once, but if you run it twice like some did, and you just fail it, what's the ramifications to student outcomes and staff?
Yeah. So our
I
levy.
know the answer, it's for everyone.
Yeah, so our levy is just over $28 million right now, depending upon whether or not you're counting fiscal year or calendar year. And so our fund balance right now is 10 million. Okay. And so just straight math, if we did not have $27 million in this budget, then we would have negative $17 million right now. And this district would be, but is not, insolvent in this hypothetical situation. So ultimately what levy funds, especially post McCleary, is what's considered enrichment or non-basic education activities. Now, the state has deemed that enrichment or non-basic education activities is anything outside of what they're funding. So athletic programs as a whole, extracurricular programs as a whole are in no way funded by state or federal government. That is all local levy. But in addition to that, those 130 educators, the 8 additional administrators, the 200 additional classified staff, all of those positions are considered enrichment per the state standards. Therefore, we can utilize levy funding to support those positions. So for a district like Peninsula School District to lose what equates to almost 20% of their overall budget through loss of levy would be, I mean, it would be very bad. I can't balance a budget without those dollars, and it doesn't matter. I can't make enough cuts to make up for that. It would not be possible to go through that, and unfortunately, that is what some of my peers are facing right now. They are facing double levy failures. They can't balance the budget. They are in binding conditions. Their decisions are being made by the state or these financial teams that are being brought in. And unfortunately, those districts then lose their identity because the decisions aren't based upon what the district and community wants for that district. It's based upon what the state narrative is. So for us, keeping a levy is obviously extremely important because it does go in order to supplement the positions across the board, all positions, teachers, classified staff, administrators. And that's what also allows us to really invest into our curricular adoptions because the state's not funding us millions of dollars each year for a curricular adoption. So when we turn around and adopt curriculum this year and then adopt curriculum next year, and we have millions of dollars worth of costs associated with getting really, vigorous curriculum to our students without the support of local levy in order to backfill where the state is not funding, we would not be able to do it. Things like our liability insurance, when I'm paying $3.5 million in order to insure the district, and I'm not talking medical insurance, I'm just talking about actual liability insurance, and the state is giving me $1 million, that other $2.5 million without a local levy then is coming from our excess state funds. So what does that mean? You have to cut more staff then in order to afford to even pay your liability insurance because you can't operate without it. It's all of those intricacies and pieces that districts face when they don't have a levy in place.
Every single time you talk, I learn so much more. I thought I knew stuff, and I realize how much I don't know. Thank you for that. I guess I won't go into all of them, but the one that I did not understand, and I don't, if you don't mind kind of re-explaining it. So the experience factor, I remember we went on that journey every year of it being reduced. What I didn't understand that it was based on not meeting a certain threshold, otherwise we would have kept it.
Correct.
Is that PSD unique? Because my impression up until this moment was that was going away for every district.
So
That was just PSD?
Yeah, so basically what ended up happening 2 legislative sessions ago when they did the rebase, a good chunk of districts lost it. We were not the only one. There were other ones, but there were other districts that got it added at that time. Now, what ended up happening is they did a change to the law that governs this experience factor. Therefore, we don't know if there's going to be a rebase done again. So we don't have it, even though we are 66%. That's our experience factor right now is 66%. You need to be above 50. We don't qualify for it based upon this rebase from 2 years ago, and based upon how they rewrote the law, we don't know when or if there will be another rebase.
Okay, so that's it. You either are in it, and it gives no accounting for
Correct.
the change that happens every single year.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. And then my other question with the cost shifting.
Yep.
You mentioned that 25% is now being cost shifted to July
And August.
and August. What was the percent?
23.5% is where we were prior to this last
Okay.
legislative change.
So
they
they-
added another 1.5%.
They added another 1.5%. Okay, all right. And so that was my question because I actually realized I didn't know what the percentage was, when it all shook out for that. Okay. Okay. Somebody else can ask questions. I'll wait.
Thank you so much for the detailed and extremely simplified, as simple as it could possibly
I really tried.
be. I know you really tried, and even so, it's still really complicated for most of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was outstanding. And like Jennifer, I learned something every time. Could you clarify? I'm looking at the slide about categorical funds. Can you clarify what if there's a difference between title funding and a title school. Are there buildings that are, I always understood that there are some buildings that are designated as Title I schools. Sometimes you'll see in other towns, I've seen a sign out front saying, we are a Title I school. What does that mean?
That means that their building has 75% or more poverty percentage within that building itself. I've worked for school districts that have Title I schools. Those schools obviously receive title allocation, but there's also a lot of other compliance requirements that come into play because the goal is to help lessen that achievement gap, because your Title I schools tend to have achievement data that's lower than like-kind or peer schools. So yeah, so we receive title funding, and title funding gets rank ordered and sent to schools based upon poverty percentage, based upon achievement data. But from a federal stance, we do not have Title I schools. We operate our schools that are receiving title funding as what's called school-wide, meaning that we don't have to do targeted assistance. And by targeted assistance title funding, it would be like you have these 5 students who got like a 1 on their SBA. And so you're going to hire a paraeducator to do pull-out support for those 5 students to help improve their achievement data. That would be targeted. And so we operate as school-wide. So we put an application into the state stating, hey, this is going to be our process for utilizing rank ordering title funds. And by we, I'm talking about Lisa Ray. Then we get the approval once our plan has been approved in order to utilize it school-wide. So we can utilize it to enhance educational opportunities for all students in the building and not just students who may be, struggling to pass the SBA.
Thank you. And also, you covered this, but I had the question back then. If title is funded, when does that happen? Is that the thing that is normally by now, but
Correct.
hasn't been this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So we're just waiting.
Okay.
So hopefully something comes through at some point. But yeah, we've received nothing so far.
All right. Thank you.
I think that we all have earned credit hours towards our CFO certification. But in all seriousness, thank you for taking very complex, like you said, and making it simpler, and for the time that you put into this. I know it's incredibly important for our community to understand it and to work with us. We are all in this together. So we appreciate that. Also, we know that you're going through bargaining audits, and on top of all of the things that you do anyway, really, truly, we appreciate the time, not only here tonight, but that went into developing this. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I will actually be presenting on PSD's success story over the next 3 days at WASBO. So at the Washington Association of School Business Officials. So we were tapped to present with actually 2 different vendors. And Chris Hagel and I will be doing an AI and finance presentation as well to really help other districts be able to weather the storm that they are facing now. And they want to learn from us.
Ashley, out of curiosity, how many districts do you know of that are entering binding conditions or will be in the next, making that announcement in the next week or so?
Yeah, so right now live, if you go onto the OSBI website, you're going to see that there's 6 that have currently gone live, as in they're actively in binding conditions. We've been told that there are 14 pending. 1 has exited so far. Now, with that being said, over the history of Washington State public education, prior to the last few years, there had only been a total of 15 districts that had ever gone into binding conditions total. So within 2 years, we will have exceeded the entire history of the state's binding condition for public schools. But Peninsula School District is not one of them. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Well, thank you, Ashley, and thank you, board, for allowing me to make some statements this evening. I think it's very important that we also thank our constituency and our Peninsula School District family for your continued engagement and for advocating for our students, staff, schools and community. I would like to add some additional context in conjunction with Ashley's fiscal presentation earlier this evening and speak directly to our entire Peninsula School District community. As your superintendent, I carry a deep responsibility to all 17 schools across our district and all close to 9,000 students that we serve. My commitment is to every student and every staff member, from our smallest elementary classrooms to our largest comprehensive high schools. Recent discussions in our community have raised important questions about staffing, resource allocation, and leadership changes. Considering these decisions and the concerns they have caused, this speaks to broader district-wide challenges and strategic decisions. We are in a moment of transformation, not by choice, absolutely not by choice, but by necessity, as you heard this evening. We face pressures, historic federal funding reductions as pandemic ESSER supports sunset. As you heard this evening, the uncertainty of fiscal dollars that have been there consistently throughout time. We don't have that at this time. An underfunded state education system, as we know and we have been advocating for, and enrollment shifts that impact school-based resources. These realities demand fiscal discipline, long-term planning, and a collective focus on student equity. And as you saw, we are in sound financial shape. However, that is only through the diligent work of many, many people and a connection with our unions across the Peninsula School District who are making really difficult decisions annually and ongoing to ensure this continues year in and year out. Guided by our strategic plan and aligned with our collective bargaining agreements and our labor partners, our decisions are grounded in equity, transparency, and student achievement. And all staffing and programmatic changes follow established protocols and timelines, as you're seeing now. May 15th is a hard date for all school districts with certificated, and timelines outlined in collective bargaining agreements. These changes are not arbitrary. They reflect a comprehensive district-wide analysis of enrollment trends, academic outcomes, and fiscal sustainability. According to recent findings in my meetings with AASA, the School Superintendents Association, School Systems National face similar post-pandemic challenges: steep funding cliff, persistent opportunity gaps, and increasing demand for specialized services. Our response must be systemic. We are actively realigning leadership structures, instructional supports, and categorical services to maximize educational impacts for all of our learners. I would like to speak directly to the concerns raised. Federal funding on Title I. Title I allocations are determined annually through the formula, as we have heard Ashley speak about, on student need. Schools receiving Title I funding continue to receive equitable support. We will provide transparent, site-level funding breakdowns to clarify how federal funds are used across the district, and when and if, hopefully when, but if we receive Title I funding from the federal government, then we will be able to do other choices. Staffing and program adjustments. All staffing decisions adhere strictly to collective bargaining agreement timelines, enrollment-based formulas, and board-adopted budget priorities. Changes to STEM and highly capable services were designed to ensure consistent access and effectiveness district-wide in response to changes in student needs, not to reduce quality, but to ensure equity. The leadership assignments, the early appointment of school leaders is intentional and strategic. It allows for relationship building, instructional planning, and seamless transition, particularly as we look ahead to the 25-26 school year. We expect all school communities to welcome and support their leadership teams as part of our shared district mission. School leaders provided input into the process that considered their current assignment, the length of time in that assignment, individuals' career goals and aspirations, and staff and student instructional needs and school needs. Staff voice, and this I feel very strongly that I want to communicate this evening. We value the input of our educators. Feedback from our staff informs ongoing decision-making. Though we remain bound by confidentiality and professional standards, a work group accompanying policy 5254 that will help clarify the policy's enforcement will be taking place later this month, in coordination with all of our labor partners to ensure it protects employee voice while upholding our shared professional responsibilities. Staff are not just permitted, but encouraged to have honest conversations with their principals and share their perspective. Staff at schools with new principals for the 25-26 school year have had the opportunity to provide input and will have opportunities to interact with those new principals this spring before the end of the school year. Let me be clear, our decisions are about sustaining a healthy, high-functioning system, as you heard this evening, that meets the needs of almost 9,000 students and hundreds of educators. Fiscal responsibility, academic excellence, and long-term viability are not in conflict. They are the foundation of our work, and that is the core responsibility of my superintendency. We know trust is earned through words and consistent strategic action. Our administration and I are committed to engaging in a respectful, solutions-focused partnership with families, staff, and community leaders. We encouraged continued participation with all parent advisory groups. We are one school district, Peninsula School District, united by a shared belief that every child deserves a strong start, a supportive learning environment, and a pathway to a bright future. And thank you for continuing this important work with us, and thank you, Board, for allowing me to make a statement.
Okay, next on our agenda is item 4.3. This is our special education annual report from our special education director, Jana Rush.
Good evening. Thank you. I will not have a presentation that's as long as Ashley's. I would like to introduce Allie Shepard. She's the Assistant Director of Special Education. She will have a portion of the presentation this evening as well. So I know you have a copy of this. So Jenny, can you advance, please? Thank you. So this year we have 191 special education staff. And we're serving just over 1,300 students this year. And so we provide that full continuum of services, and our services are defined by the law and the IEPs that are written for students, and all the supports that they require. So the next slide shows our trends from 2022-23 school year to now, and just the area or the school, the programmatically across the district where our students are served. So you can kind of see that they fluctuate, things move around, students depending on the year, and as they're rolling up from middle school to high school and elementary to middle school, our service areas change and our programmatic needs are different, and our staffing is responsive to that. The next slide talks about, and if you remember the last few presentations I've done on this, with that goal of having 80% of our students in that LRE1 spending 80% or more of their time in the general education setting. You can see our trend over time. That's our green, with the last bar being the 2026 goal. The blue is the state average. So we are above the state average. However, we're still far away from that goal of being 80% of our students in LRE 1. And it was interesting. I was in a webinar sponsored by the Council for Exceptional Children today, and the national average is around 67%. So our percentage over the last 3 years, in 2022, we were at 67. In 2023, we were at 69, and this year we're at 68%. So we're above the national average or above the state average, and we're continuing to implement practices that will allow students to move into that LRE1 category. The bottom graphic there is the percentage of students in our district that are receiving special education services. And that is a snapshot of what is represented on the state report card. So you can see the trends that OSPI is keeping track of over the course of school years as well. And so we are back to our 2021, 21, 22 rate for special education. Statewide, some districts are in the 18 to 20% range, but we are staying, relatively consistent, less than 16%. So our Leaver survey is done every year, and it's a 2-year look back. It's personal phone calls made to students and their families. So this would be the group of students that were interviewed graduating in the 22-23 school year. And it really is the phone calls made to all of those graduates that qualified for special education, and asking what they're doing now. And so this is a great metric for us to be able to track over time, because it allows us to look beyond that graduation metric and look into the future and what we are helping students be prepared for beyond high school. And so we had 80% return rate. So of those phone calls that we made, 80% of them we were able to actually get a response. And sometimes it takes our team that's making those phone calls 4, 5, 6 times, calling back, and sometimes they get a wrong number, and they're doing a little deep dive on social media and trying to find, and do you have a number for this person? We really want to reach out to them because it's very important that we have this information. So having a response rate of 80% is pretty significant. Most school districts are in the 70% range, so we've been able to increase that over the last couple of years, which is fantastic. So let me explain what the rest of the metrics are along the bottom. So the higher education, to qualify in that category, students would have to be attending a 2 or 4 year college, and at least part-time, and consistently being attending. And so for the 22-23 school year, those graduates, we had 22% of students in that category. And that, as you can see with this data on the right, is higher than the state. In the second group, the competitive employment, to qualify in that, they have to be employed 20 hours or more per week, paid minimum wage or above, and be employed in a setting with non-disabled peers. And so we've consistently increased that rate, which is fantastic. So our students are in higher education, they're competitively employed, which is just saying how wonderful we are helping to prepare students. Other education would be something that is not a 2 or 4 year college, maybe not a consistent enrollment in a program. It would be something else. So we're increasing that as well. So that's nice to see that students are able to seek out what is important for them and what is kind of filling their bucket. Other employment, which I'm glad to see has reduced, which is kind of counterintuitive, but I'm glad that we're increasing that competitive employment, so our students are employed 20 hours or more a week. That other employment would be employment that is less than 20 hours a week, or is less than minimum wage, or is in a supportive employment where they're employed with like peers. But I'm glad to see that students are able to access competitive employment. And then our non-engagement, our students that are not engaged in any of the above, right, any of those other questions, that has decreased over the last few years too. And so we're happy that students are continuing to stay engaged. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we've implemented co-teach. You can see my first year here, we had 6 sections, and 6 sections would be 6 class periods within our secondary schools of co-teach. We do that for ELA, English Language Arts, and math, where we have a general education teacher and a special education teacher teaching side by side to support special education students and general education students all within one class period. Special education students receive their specially designed instruction within that general education setting. So we started at 6 my first year here, and now we're at 41 class periods across our middle school and high school schools, so that we are increasing that access to the general education setting. So that's pretty significant, and it's pretty exciting. When we were at the job fair last week, folks would come up and they would chat with me about, ask questions about special education in Peninsula School District, and I would, they would share that they were interested in middle school or high school, and I would ask them, what is your experience with co-teach? And they would say, oh, you do co-teach? I'm so excited. I do co-teach, and I want to work in a district that does co-teach too. So co-teach is not something that is done everywhere. It's something that has been embraced by the Peninsula School District staff and the administrators that are supporting buildings, and so that's pretty exciting. The next piece, and I realized after I sent the slides that I didn't say where this growth, the math and reading growth came from. This is iReady data. And so, so I apologize for not including that. So this is this school year. And so we're looking at the percentage of typical growth on average for students in special education. So this is a comparison from where they were at the beginning of the school year to, we just completed iReady testing for math and ELA, or math and reading, I should say. And so this is as close to right now data as I can give you. We're looking to see that students are making more than 100% growth. 100% growth would be making a year's growth within a school year's amount of time. So those areas where, I mean, the lovely data for 4th grade reading, 148% growth. That's just our special education students in 4th grade across the district. Their iReady average, so some have made more growth than that, is 148%. So they're not only making a year's growth, but they're making another almost a half year's growth in addition to close that gap. James was able to run some data for me that kind of gave some context. So, oh, Jenny, can you go back, please? Thank you. So for that 4th grade reading, the growth for special education students at 148% is 8% percentage points higher than the district average for 4th grade reading growth, for typical growth. So they've exceeded the growth across the district. That is, so I want to point out as well, in 2nd grade math, that percentage is at the same level as the percentage for growth across the district. In 6th grade math, that the 89% there is 10 percentage points higher than the typical growth across the district. So there's definitely some celebrations. As you can see across all of that growth, math is lower than reading. And in talking with James, that is very similar to the data that is iReady across the district for math. And so that's leading us to look at some intervention materials for math specifically that are going to help close that gap. So we're using our data to be able to make some really good decisions. The next slide talks about budget, and my budget slide is very simple. So special education receives 3 funding sources. We have state special education funding, federal special education funding, and then where it says state basic education, that's our Peninsula School District basic education. So there is a gap between what our state and federal funding provides for us. And this year, it's about $8 million is the gap. $2 million of that will be offset by safety net funding. The final application is due on Friday, so we're getting that completed. But this year we've increased our ask of the state, because it's an ask every year for reimbursement from the state for costs exceeding their threshold to provide service to special education students. And it's an application by application basis for students. And so this was almost 60 applications that we submitted this year to be able to receive, hopefully receive the full $2 million as reimbursement. Next slide, please. So a couple of celebrations. I'm actually going to let Allie talk first. She's been instrumental in the School Links and high school course alignment, the high school and beyond planning. And so I'm going to let her talk, and then I will follow up with our systems.
Thank you for letting me present. So this school year we began training with our middle school and high school IEP case managers and school psychologists in partnership with our CTE department to implement the OSPI required platform for high school and beyond planning called School Links. This is we were a pioneering district in that we were an early adopting district, so we partnered with School Links to work out some of the challenges and also point out some of the successes. So I really want to thank our middle school and high school teams for engaging in that work and walking through the process with us to really implement a final product for our students in their high school courses for the 25-26 school year that was meaningful. School Links is an interest-based survey type platform where students get to engage interactively in their likes and interests and build a profile that shows what might be possible for them beyond high school. So we know that we are preparing students for jobs and careers that aren't even thought of yet, right? So we're building them with skills and knowledge to ask those essential questions of themselves. Who am I? What do I want to become? And how do I get there? So through the high school and beyond planning School Links process, all of our middle school and high schoolers engaged in this interest survey. It helped design courses for their high school schedules next fall. And it's been a very rewarding process. Because we were also at the same time aligning our high school courses with the same course names and course codes, and that's really important so that we reduce variability between our sites and we increase our structural alignment and program consistency. So that process was completed before we launched the School Links survey, so we could place kids into their ELA and math classes with the right amount of support based on their specially designed instruction goals on their IEP. So the efforts focused on School Links and high school course alignment ultimately support our students in special education with that high school and beyond planning with future thinking while currently planning their pathways to graduation. I just want to say again, thank you to our secondary team, our case managers, our school psychologists, CTE director for their partnership and collaboration with both of these updates, launching us into solid success for the 25-26 school year.
So that's, back please. Thank you. That's one of the systems that we've had to create this year, and that's really been one of our big focuses, is being able to create sustainable systems. Another big system that we have started to implement it last year, but we've really been able to systematize it this year, is our transitional meetings, preschool to elementary, elementary to middle, middle to high school into our CTP program if that's appropriate, and it pulling staff together to sit side by side and talk about students. This is what I love about this kiddo. You are going to love them. These supports in place at your school will help them be the most successful. That information has been shared with principals so that they can use that for master scheduling purposes, making sure students are supported appropriately, and then we'll be meeting with parents, the receiving school. We're setting up those meetings now and setting out that communication so that the parents will be able to go to the receiving school and have a point of contact, a friendly face, somebody that they recognize and can start building those relationships with as well. Right response certification was an area that we identified needing some restructuring and some systems development. So we've worked on correcting and making sure that we are training the correct people, not overtraining so many people, and kind of revamping how we have done our certifications and our recertifications, taken an opportunity to do some blended recertification so that there isn't so much seat time for people to have to be in a seat learning right response, where there's an opportunity to do some blended online learning as well. We also took the opportunity to review and revamp our isolation and restraint reporting forms so that the data that we were receiving was easy to report to PowerSchool, generated appropriate information for families, and it was also giving us the data that we needed to be able to support schools appropriately and look for trends, those kinds of things. And so that was largely done by Mason in the technology department. He was doing magic things with coding that I don't even understand. But now the incident report directly to PowerSchool so that that information is entered, so we're reporting appropriately to the state as well. We used to have to do hand entries of that information, and so now it's all automated. So we really thank Mason for helping out with that. Jenny, thank you. So looking toward the future, we're going to continue our program alignment, really focusing on that CTP kind of backwards to make sure that we're continuing to support students with the most critical needs in being able to make sure that they have employment opportunities and opportunities to beyond high school. We also are going to lean heavily into, as I mentioned, with the math data, looking at some new materials for math and writing, specifically that partner with our adoptions of new materials and our piloting of new materials for general education, so that we're working in partnership to make sure that we have materials that support the general education materials as well. So writing and math will be our focus. We've spent a lot of time making sure that our reading materials are appropriate. Now it's time to move into the math and writing as well. For professional development, building off of the work that has been done with School Links and the high school course planning, all of that, we're really going to dig in with professional development on high school and beyond planning and how that works with the IEP portion or the transition portion of the IEP, and really supporting staff and making sure that they have the tools that they need and students have a piece of that and understand how powerful that is for themselves. We're going to, part of our right response retooling was to provide some pretty intensive professional development for staff as well. We'll be front loading that over the summer and early fall so that staff are trained and we aren't having to repeat trainings throughout the school year. And then lastly, inclusionary practices, continuing to provide strategies, continuing to provide support and training for staff as we're working toward that goal of 80%. Questions?
I have one quick question just about the co-teach model and then our goal of that
Yes.
80%. Do you think the increased opportunities for co-teaching are really driving the LRE goals? Or is that something else?
That our increase in the co-teach sections is leading to
Yes.
higher, yes.
That's what's driving this.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I think that's a huge, big impact in being able to get that direction.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk a little bit about, Ashley talked about title funding, federal title funding. Can you talk about federal IDEA funding and any federal funding concerns or
what you're hearing or seeing?
From what I've been able to follow and what I've been able to understand is that IDEA did not take a considerable hit, so to speak, in federal funding. But as Ashley said, really, the details haven't come out yet on how they're going to redefine how that funding is. So we don't know yet. But I'm not budgeting for a significant decrease. Probably just won't have a significant increase. Is kind of how we're viewing it. Other questions?
Yeah, one of the things, I learned last year was that two of the biggest issues that were facing school districts across the state financially was transportation, but the biggest one was lack of state funding around special ed. And it's unfortunate our state legislature let us down on that again this year. But with that said, with the focus on trying to keep all students in gen ed, that's challenging to have special ed students in gen ed. My question specifically would be, with that lack of state funding, especially towards SPED-trained paraeducators, teachers I know are overwhelmed having to teach a class without SPED paras in the class. So how is the Peninsula School District doing as far as having trained paraeducators in SPED to help assist our teachers?
So Katie Cartham has increased the opportunity as paraeducators are getting onboarded into our system for paraeducator training. So they spend time with her and time doing training, and they spend time in their building doing some shadowing and getting some training that way before they start in their position and role. So that's a new thing that's been started this year that's been really, really helpful for paraeducators who maybe have not worked in public schools before, being able to have some background and some training before they start their position. So that's been very, very helpful. We rely upon the buildings to provide the training for their paraeducator staff. Most of the training that they receive is on the job training. And so because it's specifically for the students that they will be working with.
Okay.
And so that is where they receive the bulk of their training as far as special education.
I know certificated teachers get clock hours to help move them up the salary schedule. When paras get this OJT in the classroom, is that considered also a clock hour that might help them move up a ladder? And then, do our paras that are trained in special ed, what percentage are them moving into being a certificated teacher, or are they staying in that paraeducator world because that's what they just like to? It's what they love to do.
I don't have a quick answer to be able to give you about how many of our special education paras move into special education teaching roles. But our paraeducators, in addition to the on-the-job training, they too have to earn clock hours. They have requirements from the state on what they have to do. And so on our, professional development days, they can earn clock hours that way. There's training that's set aside specifically for paraeducators across the district, not specifically just for special education, but the special education paras can take advantage of that opportunity.
I guess the last question is, do our certificated teachers feel supported by the district around providing enough SPED paraeducators?
I think that depends on which teacher you're asking.
Okay,
but
fair enough. Yeah.
But some teachers appreciate having many, many, many paraeducators in their classroom, and some teachers don't want to have a significant number of paraeducators in their classroom. It's really probably more dependent upon the needs of the students. Students with more significant needs and who have a complicated profile need paraeducator support, and highly trained paraeducators are the best paraeducators we can have. And paraeducators who have been in our district and know our students well are also the best paraeducators that we can have. And so we're working to be able to support that.
I just want to give you some kudos.
Thank you.
You've gone through all the questions, but I had the opportunity to see some of those kids out in the community and the pride that they display when they are out there performing a job or something. And it's just, it makes you feel really good about the job that you're doing. So I just
They're
want to say
amazing.
thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Okay, well, I think both of you can stay there. And I'm going to call up our item 4.4, our Special Education Parent Advisory Committee Annual Board Report. So this is, I believe, year 2 of this. Has it been 2 years since we created this organization? So we're very much looking forward to this report.
Hello. I'm Brianna Trageser, the chairperson of CPAC. Oh, there it is on the screen, for the past 2 years. And I am alongside Emily Ducharme, our vice chairperson. And we will be sharing some updates on behalf of the CPAC, as well as our veteran members, Ann Bunker and Heidi Williams, and our new members, Marian Anderson and Mark Jerkovich. Next slide, please. Okay, so part of CPAC's goal for our time in service was to develop and implement a family education series, and the 2024-25 school year was our second full year of doing just that. We offered 7 different events throughout the course of the school year, inclusive of a resource fair, during which we invited in community partners that support those with disabilities so that we can better support families beyond what can be offered within our school district and facilitate collaborative relationships between special education and the larger community. The other 6 events were special topic presentations on areas that families have expressed interest in learning more about. So we chose to focus on some offerings being more general, like what to expect from the evaluation and IEP process, as well as some more specialized topics such as the intersection of mental health and social, emotional, and behavioral supports. Next slide. So as I mentioned, a big part of our duties as a committee was getting the family education series up and running and working to attract members of the district community to support information and resource sharing. These events typically consisted of an educational presentation by district staff, followed by an opportunity for group discussion, as well as individual opportunities for families to connect with district staff. And we're really pleased with how these events have evolved over the time that we've offered them, and that we've had the opportunity to reach many families and provide support and education on a variety of topics.
Next slide, please. The second focus area for CPAC was to develop opportunities for relationship building between special education families, district staff, including leadership, and community partners. Throughout this school year, we worked really to amplify voices of families and advocate for meaningful learning opportunities. For the first time in October, students with disabilities were highlighted on social media, which I literally have goosebumps talking about right now. So that was really cool. That's not something that's ever happened before. And being seen like that in a very public way is the first step to being valued, and that visibility matters, and it sets a tone for belonging, and that's huge. You can't put a price on that. That's just super essential. Another part that we advocated for is we have supported unified sports and clubs, encourage schools to build welcoming, inclusive spaces, because we believe that inclusion shouldn't just be a value, it should be a practice. And you won't find a better example of that than in a unified club, on a unified sports field, in esports, any of that. That is huge, and that's so essential to just what we as parents want to see more of, is any opportunity for those kinds of things. Additionally, CPAC members are playing a key role in planning for Day of Champions, which is happening on June 13th, and it's going to be fun, going to be exciting, but more also be a celebration of ability, belonging, and school spirit. Next slide, please. Sorry. Oh, go back one. The third focus area was to promote inclusion through equal opportunities and quality education for all students, regardless of their abilities, backgrounds, or differences throughout the school year. Additionally, one of the other things we did was invite building administrators into our meetings, which turned into a really cool thing because we gave them a chance for us to learn from them, but also an open forum that, hey, what questions do you want to know from us? What can we tell you about what inclusion means to families, or what all of those kinds of things, which was really awesome. That helped strengthen collaboration. And ultimately, we hope that that leads to more aligned student-centered support. We also met with Penn Met Parks and discussed how they can help support SPED programs and special needs kids throughout the community. We additionally, like Brianna said, at the resource fair, we invited a lot of community partners who touch families and needs and have resources. And they were here. They were in this room and presented just all of their offerings to families, which was awesome. In short, CPAC is not just about advocacy, it's about partnership, collaboration, and progress. One of the things that I have most appreciated over the last 2 or 3 years has been that everything, every conversation, every discussion, every recommendation, everything that we have said in a meeting is rooted in lived experiences, and that for families to bring that to the table helps create systems that it's meaningful change, and that's the kind of thing that is awesome, that I have loved to see. Last year I stood up here and I said we were just at the tip of the iceberg. I think we're a little bit past the tip of the iceberg, but there's still more to go. I appreciate you all for prioritizing this work and continuing, allowing the CPAC to exist, and I'm excited that that resolution gets renewed. So.
Can I ask a quick question, please? Can you elaborate a little bit on what is Day of Champions, and if there's volunteers needed, or how can people get involved if you need that?
Okay. I have this tendency to just talk and not really ask. Day of Champions is an inclusive and adapted field day event that it has happened historically in various pockets across the state. We are loosely modeling ours off of North Thurston's overall event, but bringing in the unified piece, because that unified piece is real important to this district. Happening on June 13th. We have how many students attending? 150. So, yes, we need volunteers. Stand by for more information. But it's happening at Roy Anderson Field. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be cool. Kids are excited. Families are excited. So yeah, that's Day of Champions. And I would be remiss if I didn't have one more plug. The last chance to watch unified soccer is happening on Saturday between, 9 and 11 at Spark Stadium in Puyallup, and that'll be their last games of the season. So get that plug in also.
Do you have other questions of CPAC?
I just want to say how grateful I am for the work that you're doing, and how cool it has been to see the progress from the idea to where we are now. I recently was speaking with someone who has a child in a King County school district and just doesn't have anything at all like this. I said, do you have some sort of parent committee that, and she just was really frustrated with a lot of the things that, people experience, but this is such a great pathway to involvement, and it's just, I really appreciate your work spearheading this. Thank you.
I'm just going to say the same thing. I've had parents from other school districts that have seen what you're doing. A couple actually traveled from other school districts to attend some of your events, and the same thing. They wish they had something like CPAC in their schools. So well done.
I'll just wrap it up with similar. I know that this came from kind of a rocky start, and I appreciate the vulnerability and courage that it took to come together to create this. And I'm looking over at John and Lisa as well. I know you were in part of the startup of this. So I think that we've come from a place where the relationships were struggling, especially after COVID and being out of the buildings for so long, to having people really willing to come to the table to do what's best for kids. So you have been an amazingly successful first advisory group, and I certainly hope that this board votes on approving the resolution to keep it going, because I think it brings tremendous value to our district. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, great. Okay, that takes us to our final report of the evening. So we have got our safety and security SSO mid-year report. So we've got Chris Hagel and our SSOs here, Brent Moose, to report for us.
You bet. Thanks for having me. I'll have Moose and Brent join in here in a little bit, but just want to kind of go over some of the things that we've been doing this school year. All of these are thanks to the SS&T levy that our community supported. So I just want to kind of talk about a little bit about what we're doing with some of that money and how that's going. The first one up is emergency supplies. So one of the things that people, you know, when we talk about school safety and school security, one of the things, you know, it always comes, people think about active shooter, but statistically, the most likely thing that's going to happen at school is a natural disaster that we may, you know, an earthquake. We're in an area that we have earthquakes. And so one of the things that we've realized is that we are not completely outfit in every classroom and in every school with all of the supplies that we need. And so I'll let Moose tell a little bit more about this story, these pictures here in a little bit, but all classrooms are being equipped this year, and most of them are already done now with emergency backpacks, to-go bags out of every classroom. He can tell the story about this one. Jenny, if you'll go to the next slide. We are in the process right now. These are emergency containers we saw in another school district, well outfitted with search and rescue supplies, water for kids, water for staff if for some reason they're stuck at the buildings for days, as well as some other, you know, emergency supplies. We have recently, I think they're working on the purchase order right now to purchasing brand new shipping containers for every single building, all 17 schools. We will be equipping all of our schools with shipping containers full of emergency supplies this summer. So they will be ready for the start of school. But you can see there, this is the Tahoma School District that we got. We've kind of been borrowing a lot of their information that they've shared with us. But for any type of incident that might take place at school, even some of the power outages we've seen lately, we don't have generators for some of the things that would really be nice to have generators for. So even in here, you'll see some portable generators and things like that that we'll be purchasing for every building. So emergency supplies is a big one that we've been working on this year, and we'll finish up over the summer. As all of you have seen, if you've been to any of our schools this year, all of our schools have visitor and volunteer management systems now. This is for people checking in every day when they come into school. It does run it asks you to scan your ID, runs a quick background check to make sure that there are things that, you know, we don't want people coming into our school if they've done in their previous life. So we do scan those. And it also helps us in a time of emergency. We know everybody that's in the building. We're able to know, you know, if we do have to evacuate, those kind of things. Allows us to know who we need to make sure that we get out at the same time. Next, Jenny. Okay. Some other things we're doing that are coming up this summer, and all of these are in process, but I wanted to share them. So our emergency notification system, sometimes thought of as paging systems for in big needs in the building. Some of those are 30 years old and they're failing. And so one of the things that we wanted to do with the SS&T money is replace those. They are expensive, but we are replacing 3 of them this summer and hope to have the rest over the next few years. We're cycling through a little bit by a little bit each summer. But Purdy, Goodman, and Voyager will all be getting those this year. We're also in the process, and we'll be doing more work this summer on replacing and expanding security cameras. So we have some 10-year-old cameras that are really hard for some of these guys to be able to see some things on, and so we're doing that. We also have principals identifying areas that they really would like to have some more coverage on with cameras. So we're getting those installed. You know, some of those are right now, and we'll do more over the summer. We just had contractors out last week. We're looking at expansion of access control. So if you'll remember back to our very first security audit in 2016 or 2014 when it happened, about 2016 we started putting in access control, and in some buildings all we did was just the front door for the card swipes. And so we're going to be expanding that going into the summer and into next year. We've been waiting on some technology to advance. Plus we're still coming out of some really weird shortages that we had during COVID, where we had to put in some kind of older card reader technology. And so we'll be moving to some of the new stuff this summer. And then the last piece, last summer we converted all of our bus radio systems over to digital FirstNet powered radio systems. This summer we're going to be integrating them into the analog system, so we have both. They will work on either system, and so that's a big change, and it'll be a great new addition for some of the work we're doing. So that's some of the other stuff we got coming this summer. Next slide, Jenny. Also this summer we will be outfitting both these fellows with new security vehicles. They will be They're being shipped off shortly to be finalized, and they will be in place for the next school year. So those are coming. And then when I originally put this slide in, I thought we were going to be in much better shape on this one. So every month I go and meet with all of the other safety and security people, or sometimes these guys go around the county, and we meet with emergency management. And one of the conversations we've been having this year is about the terms lockdown and modified lockdown. Parents and people in the community struggle a lot with what is the difference between modified lockdown and lockdown. And sometimes in modified lockdown situations, we really just need kids to stay in their classroom. Maybe there's a student having a medical issue in the hallway, and we just need to make sure that people can help them and keep them in their classroom. But the only terms we have to do that is modified lockdown, and the word lockdown just scares people. So a lot of school districts across the country are moving to what's called the standard response protocol, which gives you different levels that you would put a building into. I thought when I put this slide in that we were going to move as an entire county for next year. That's kind of slowed down a little bit. Some of our law enforcement partners want everybody in the county, not just school districts, but hospitals, large shopping malls, all of those people to start making that transition, movie theaters, some of these things to everybody using this. And so we've got another few months to do some work on that. So likely coming in the 26-27 school year, but I thought we were going to be ready to launch. But just kind of a information thing that we will likely be changing the way that we talk about what's going on in the buildings in about a year from now, just to kind of make it more appropriate to what we're actually doing. And then I just want to give these guys a couple minutes each to talk about what's going on in each of them. Are responsible for their feeder schools outside of their comprehensive high schools. So Moose is at Gig Harbor, and he supports all of the schools under the Gig Harbor feeder side, and Brent's on the other side. So just want to give them a couple minutes to talk about the things that they've been doing on their sides.
I'm going to bring my own mic sometime. Yeah, so again, busy school year. A lot of new projects we've taken on. I think it started off the year, Brent and I started shooting a couple public service announcements that went through the district, one on bus safety, the other on during school safety week. Worked with the district and got those out. I believe they're available on YouTube. It was a lot of fun. We hired someone at Henderson Bay, a security specialist. He is works very well with the students. His wife is a substitute teacher for the district, and he's a district parent as well. So he's fitting in. He brings a lot of experience, not only in the security aspect, military base, but also in the teaching role. So the students seem to like him. Staff are very happy that he's there to support their efforts. December Tides Fest takes up everything, so that was a lot of fun. Very big turnout. Actually worked that for the first year. Every day it's a lot of work, and I'm really impressed by how the community comes together and, get things set up and then get things taken down, but have a lot of fun in between then. So that was really cool to see. Tried to implement, I got approached by one of the counselors at my middle school for mainly some of the 7th, 8th grade boys having some 7th, 8th grade boy shenanigan issues, and say, hey, why don't you get to know these kids and kind of introduce yourself and kind of be like a mentorship. And I believe Brent is already doing something like that at one of his schools where, hey, you're going to see me when you get to high school, and this is how we expect older gentlemen to act. So trying to get that going again. Something fell through, but we'll give that a shot again because I really like that idea. Going back to the picture that Chris was referring to. Nope, sorry, the other one. Yep. Really no other way to say this. This was a great day to be at work and see this. Probably a week before the ASB instructors put out an email to all Gig Harbor staff. If you ever need our ASB kids to help you with anything, just let us know. Well, I was given a task to provide backpacks for every classroom in the high school, of which we currently had 0. And the supplies that go inside the backpack, which we currently had zero. So myself and my security specialist ordered to our needs to that building. I mean, every school has this list that we want to make somewhat universal, but you know, the elementary school looks different than the 83 classrooms at the high school. So we catered it to our needs, and in doing so, we just wound up saving $10,000 out of the school budget, which I'm pretty happy with. I've never done anything like that. So, but also we got everything we needed on time, working well with the bookkeeper. And I was looking at my soft deadline, and I had about what I expected 2 to 3 days of work to be done. And I was looking at Trevor, my security specialist. So I'm like, I don't know how we're going to do this. And then I remember the ASB kids. So ASB teachers were more than happy, and these 2 senior girls led the whole charge. You could see it in their faces that they meant business. And what I estimated to be 2 to 3 day work, they finished in 1 45-minute period with some of their classmates. So if you've never seen the assembly line in action, Henry Ford was onto something. It's pretty remarkable. So that's the extent. We're just wrapping those up. Actually, I think we're going to deliver those backpacks tomorrow to the classrooms. And I'm also kind of setting up a building safety committee that we had in place, but I'm catering more to the hallways of the wings and have a representative teacher from every wing with an emergency radio ready to go should the need arise. You know, something we learned from the power outage last week, where just simple communication down in the wing, what's going on, where are we with this? And so I'm going to set up an ambassador team. I haven't found a cool nickname yet or a acronym, but I welcome suggestions. So, and I will turn it over to Brent.
I don't have a problem speaking into this. From my side of the track, so just to kind of reiterate what my feeder schools are, I've got Evergreen Elementary, Minter Creek, Vaughan, Swiftwater, Harbor Ridge, KPMS, and Peninsula High School. To start off, all schools right now are on target, completing their 10 mandatory required drills. That's 3 mandatory 3 modified lockdown, 3 lockdown, 1 earthquake, 2 fire with evacuation, and 1 shelter in place. That's required. All are on track to finish those. Those are going great. To date, I have presented to all school staff lockdown and modified lockdown processes. I've also offered and done quite a few one-on-one meetings with teachers in their classrooms so they can see what it looks like in their classrooms during a modified lockdown and during a lockdown. So that's been real successful. Vaughan Elementary, Purdy Elementary, and I think Harbor Ridge Middle and KPMS have all done a modified drill during either recess, lunch, or passing period, which if you haven't seen it, to have a drill during those times is really difficult, really challenging, but it's probably going to happen during one of those times. We wanted them to drill during those times, and they did it, and it worked out great. So real great success in that. I have met with most of my schools and gone over their ICS flow charts. ICS is a really daunting thing. When we first started this, I think it was last year. You should have seen the teachers at the summer meeting. We were talking about ICS, and everybody's just like, this is too much. This year we did it again, and in my schools, I really simplify it, and I say we're giving structure to crisis. It can be a big crisis, it can be a medical problem, but we can have an ICS of sorts for the small to the big. And when we did it that way, it made a lot more sense. So we've had a lot of tabletop discussions on how that works, what it looks like, what the roles and responsibilities are, and it's gone phenomenal. I think is Jana gone? Hi, Jana. We're going to implement the ICS flow chart when we have that field day, and we went over that for the first time the other day, so that's going to be great. So it's becoming more and more familiar to everybody in the district, and then when we do have a crisis or we do have a natural disaster or whatever, a medical event, we're better prepared to respond. So that's why the ICS is important. We already talked about the backpacks. All my schools are pretty much done with those. Specific schools or specific groups of schools. Elementary schools, I'm continuing to be a visible presence, whether it's drop off in the morning, pick up in the afternoon, shaking hands, waving, all that stuff, just to give a good positive vibe and so people can see who we are. I've been involved in assemblies at the elementary schools. I've been silly stringed. I have been in a spelling bee competition, which I had to throw because I actually would have won. And I was raffled off for lunch with Officer Campbell, and that was a lot of fun. So really just school spirit stuff in the elementary schools. Middle schools, we're really digging into drug and alcohol awareness, talking with staff, talking with parents, talking with students at both Harbor Ridge and at KPMS. That's going really well. I even had a middle school teacher from Harbor Ridge come up to me yesterday. She said, hey, I just want you to know we're talking about this, this, and this in class. Now, what do you think I should do next? Should I be talking about this? I'm like, you're doing great. Keep doing it. Visible presence at the middle schools is really big right now. There's some struggles that are going on, so I'm really trying to be visible at the middle schools. At the high school, daily presence, building relationships, it's continuing to have big payoffs. These kids, when they know you, when they see you, they can come to you, they can tell you things. It's huge, building relationships. I did a dance-off, which was horrible at the high school. The dance they chose for me was ballet, and it's the worst thing I've ever experienced. I'm not sure how I drew that straw. But I didn't win. We did come in second, so that was good. The other thing at the high school, I'm presenting to health classes, their drug and alcohol education. I've done that with all the health classes this year, and for the first time this year, I'm presenting in civics classes for their Fourth Amendment and how it relates to search and seizure. So those have been phenomenal discussions. They always go down different rabbit holes, but we always bring it back, and it's been great. The kids have loved it. Community. So I have participated in 2 fentanyl awareness presentations with Robin Denson, Pierce County Councilwoman. Phenomenal. They were just huge hits. I hope we do it again. I hope we do more. The turnout was great, and the community was fantastic. We continue to build rapport with Pierce County Sheriff's Office and Gig Harbor Police Department. I have nothing but great things to say about them. They have been responsive. They have been fast. It's been a great partnership. Last but not least, working with Safeway and Albertsons and their loss prevention department. We have an issue with students venturing out to these stores during lunchtime and walking away with food without paying for it. We're helping them identify, we're helping them work with how do we deter students from taking stuff without paying? Well, it's point of purchase and where you position stuff and how you do stuff. So that they've made changes on their side to make it harder. So that's been great. And I took that program from something I learned as a police officer when I was dealing with Safeways and Targets. Changing how they check stuff out was a big deal. So we've kind of just moved that into these. Overall, I love my job. You guys are just so supportive and helpful. Every single one of you we see all the time. We thank you. It's just made this job, and I think I can speak for Moose as well. It makes it the world of difference when you guys are here to support us, and it's all the time. It's not just once in a while, it's all the time. And Chris, phenomenal. He's a great support too, so thank you very much. Questions? I think I just spoke with my hands a lot.
I just want to thank you both. I think what I appreciate the most is both of your commitment, first and foremost, to relationship building. And I see that. I see you drop off all the time. I see both of you everywhere all the time. And my only question is, you left something out, your shameless plug for flag football. In terms of relationship building.
Yeah, so first year for Peninsula High School to have girls flag football was this year. We had 3 wins, but we won the sportsmanship award for the entire league, which was nominated by the other coaches on all the other teams. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. I think I heard so much positive feedback from parents of girls on that team and your role and how much they appreciated this inaugural season. So thank you.
A lot of fun.
And I just asked, what is your, when you send the 2 patrol cars off, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna put like radios so you can communicate with PD and the sheriff? What's gonna be in
I'll
the
let
car?
Chris tell you what he's going to put in.
Yeah. So, one of the things they will be marketed as Peninsula School District Security. They'll have light bars, they'll have radios, they'll have all of the same technology we're actually installing on the buses these days. So yeah, they'll be equipped for kind of just a emergency response, no matter what that is, for these guys to make it out into the buildings or into the community. So lots of things that we've seen so far that we need, and we actually brought this up with Gig Harbor Police last week, and they were really excited to hear that we were getting these as well. So it's just another. There is a visual deterrent to seeing a vehicle in front of the school, and so that's also one of the benefits for that. So.
A quick comment, just to add my thanks for all of that you guys do. And we just could not be more pleased with how far we've come in the last few years. From I'd say you guys are meeting and exceeding the expectations that at least I had for this role so soon. And based on just my actual paying job experience, I can't tell you how happy I am. I've been saying for a long time that with the work with the ICS and even the switching the terminology for a lockdown, modified lockdown. I mean, I think that it's very empowering to have in an emergency or even just something out of the ordinary to have a standardized protocol and a plan. So you can go quickly through the what am I going to do to I know what I'm going to do, and you just do it. And so I think it's just invaluable, and I really thank you for that.
So one more comment. I think part of what the success of this program is the hiring process we did. I think we picked up 2 great guys who are fitting in, who are working hard at really making this work. And so I really appreciate having you guys on board.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yep, I think it was a long, hard road to get here. We fought for a very long time to get these positions, but I can say earnestly that if the wait meant getting the 2 of you rather than someone else, we would do it all over again. You've made all the difference. And we can't say it enough. I can't remember what it was like before you were here, and I can't imagine what it would be like without. So I have some insight to the Gig Harbor side because I have kids there. So I have heard a couple of things. One, a bunch of kids I think you must have just got out of some kind of a drill, but the chime that happens after a lockdown drill, which they know it's a drill, but they said it's so cheerful that it's a little bit off-putting maybe. So just some feedback. But also I want to hear about the lunch with Moose as a goal. So I've heard the 2 goals for behavior at Gig Harbor, recognized for doing great things. One is lunch with Moose and one is teacher haircut. So is there truth to that? Are you a prize? No one has achieved it yet then. Okay. I think it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's something that the kids strive for. And again, thank you so much. It's made all the difference. We're incredibly grateful and proud of the work that you do.
Thank you.
Okay, we are rolling on to item 5, comments from the community on our agenda items. And I have an agenda item sign-up sheet here and a non-agenda sign-up sheet here. There's some duplicate names, so I think we'll start with the agenda items. These are for people who are speaking specifically on items on the agenda. If you are not speaking on both this evening, just let us know. So, the statement. When you are called, please come to the podium and begin by stating your first and last name. You will have up to 3 minutes to address the board. We recognize that many of you are speaking from a place of deep passion, concern, or maybe even frustration, and while we welcome diverse perspectives, we ask that all comments be shared with civility and respect, and this expectation applies to everyone in the room. We ask that the audience remain quiet and respectful during each speaker's time. Applause, outbursts, or interruptions are not appropriate, and this helps ensure a safe and constructive environment for everyone during this business meeting. Please note that the board does not respond to public comments during the meeting. This does not imply agreement, disagreement, or indifference, but rather reflects our responsibility to remain neutral in the setting so that we can fully listen and reflect on what is being shared. When appropriate, the board may direct the superintendent to have a staff member follow up on specific concerns. So on our agenda items this evening, first we have Jessica Gamble.
All right. Okay. Sorry, I'm so used to holding a mic. Hi, my name is Dominique Riles, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. I do want to say that I am here in support of the speakers that represent the parents of Minter Creek. However, I'm also here to speak on something somewhat different tonight, but I promise it will connect in just a moment. As someone present at also the last school board meeting, I heard many things brought up about those hired by the board to create a stronger environment for the success of all the students in its district, that bullying would not be tolerated and that racism would be taken seriously. Now, I do not say this to offend anyone, but as a conservative, I do not believe in things like microaggressions or anything of that nature, but when it comes to blatant racist remarks being made and physical threats of harm, such as "I wish you were a slave" or "I'm going to beat you up," statements that were literally just made to my nephew, and the principal at Voyager just today was asked to bring resolution and consequences to restore order and safety, informed my brother that it was too late in the school year to provide consequences to the student that made those remarks. Even though if he had placed a hand on my nephew, that it would be considered a hate crime. So please help me to understand how failing to teach children that it is never too late to do the right thing is beneficial to their future and that of our community as a whole. As a teenager, all but one of the black males that I knew out here got jumped more than once. So for my brother, while we love Gig Harbor, this is how it started in elementary school. If it doesn't get corrected early, it escalates into problems that are much harder to control and de-escalate with age. And we have at least 10 times, if not more, the amount of blacks now than we did when I was growing up. Avoiding the problem does not make it go away. Resolving it to maybe let the child that had the hateful racist remarks made against them leave the school a little early in the year, basically sending the black child away to resolve the problem, sends the wrong message. I want to add that also at the last meeting, strong relationships with educators and staff are also important for the success of our students. And I believe that the grief expressed by many of the parents of Minter Creek and other parents in Gig Harbor is that many of us grew up having the same educators from elementary, middle school, and high school. My former elementary PE teacher was also my son's for a few years, and I still have a relationship with her. Also my 5th grade teacher, my high school principal, and a few of my high school teachers and coaches. And none of them would have sided with or tolerated a bully. Those are a few of the relationships that we want protected for our children. That stability helps create foundations for success at schools.
Ms. Riles, that's your
Sorry.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to remind everyone, this agenda portion is for enumerated agenda items. So if you have something that is not on the enumerated agenda, then that will be saved for the next comment section. But I have next on this list Jessica Gamble, speaking on item 4.1.
Sorry, we didn't want to take it. We scribbled it out, and we didn't want to take up 2 lines, so we have 3 speakers
On the agenda.
for the agenda items. So
For
if you
agenda
look at the
item.
sign up, yeah, I wanted to clarify that because we didn't know if there was an extra sheet and didn't want to take up an extra line unnecessarily.
Oh, I
So that's-
see.
Yeah. Does that make sense? I'm sorry.
Yes, I will
Okay.
just call you each as listed here.
Okay, wonderful. All right, my name is Jessica Gamble. I'm the Minter Creek PTA president. I spoke last time as well. I first of all just want to say I appreciate the beginning of direct, like telling us how, I guess, see, I don't do this, but you're directly addressing our concerns, and I appreciate that. I hear that, I see that, I'm excited for the future of that and to continue that. We have a letter, there are 3 of us that are going to read it. It will be submitted to Preston Barr, Michael Farmer, and Julie Schultz-Bartlett tomorrow, and we just wanted to make you as the board aware of that, of the questions that we're asking. Our journey began with a single serious concern, the unexpected rotation of our school principals and the far-reaching impact this decision could have on our schools. As we reached out in good faith, seeking honest dialogue, transparency, and meaningful partnership, we were met instead with vague justifications and the dismissal of our concerns. What began as one issue has since uncovered something far more troubling, a deep and growing disconnect between district leadership and the community it is meant to serve. Our concerns, along with those of more than 500 petition signers, can be summarized as follows. Involuntary principal placement. Concerns over lack of transparency, unclear criteria, and potential negative impacts on school communities. 2, staff and budget and funding decisions. Concerns over cuts to essential programs and staff. 3, staff expression and culture. Staff expression policy 5254, without procedures in place, has created a culture of fear and unjustly suppressed open communication among district staff. 4, erosion of trust, acknowledgement of growing mistrust, and demand for meaningful steps to rebuild relationships. 5, lack of transparency, calls for data sharing, clear communication, and openness about decision-making and district goals. 6, lack of shared values. Recent actions suggest the district may not share or fully understand the community's values. We want to partner with our district and to work together to support our community. However, we will advocate for our kids and pursue answers by every means available to us until these concerns are fully and honestly addressed. In response to Michael Farmer's email dated May 2nd, we request the answers to the following questions related to the key concerns listed above. While not an exhaustive list, your candid and thorough answers would go a long way to building the type of relationship we crave with our school leaders. Involuntary principal placement. What are the specific details, including the name of the long-term strategic plan you referenced in our meeting that incorporates this strategy, which has been in development for the past 2 years? What specific data supports the claim that principal rotations are a best practice in school districts? 2, what is the detailed criteria and rationale for how principals were reassigned, considering that the previously provided criteria, tenure, and desire to move do not align with the actual reassignments? 3, what measurable criteria will the district use to evaluate the effectiveness of the involuntary principal placement strategy and to assess the overall health and climate of each school following its implementation in the 25-26 school year?
Is that your time?
Yeah, I saw.
Okay, next we have Pamela, is it Locke?
We're switching. Heather Bruin.
Sorry. So my name is Heather Bruin. I'll be the second reader. So to continue where Jess left off. 4, if this strategy is determined to be a success, how do you intend to implement new principal reassignments in the future? 5, what is the district's plan if principal reassignments result in negative outcomes? 6, with research showing that stability is crucial for children's development, how will the district support students, staff, and families through the emotional and educational disruptions caused by major administrative changes? Will mental health resources like counseling be provided? And then we move into evaluation of involuntary principal placement at Minter Creek specifically. We are committed to supporting our new principal. These questions are aimed at being proactive and constructive. However, addressing these questions and concerns are critical for any hope of collaboration and success. 1, how does the district plan to support our new principal's integration into the Minter Creek community, especially given the current challenges and concerns of staff and families? 2, what is the district's plan if integration efforts are not successful? 3, given the progress Minter Creek is making under our current principal and community concerns regarding the incoming principal, how was the community's reaction not anticipated? 4, why was the incoming principal chosen to lead Minter Creek, especially when the stated reason, improved reading and overall test scores, do not appear to align with the data available on the OSPI website? Involuntary teacher placement and budget cuts. 1, please explain the reasoning behind any pay raises within the district administration office, especially given the potential cuts to student-facing positions. Is the district considering reducing or eliminating any administrative roles? If not, please clarify why those positions are being maintained while school-level roles are being cut. 2, how can the district afford the Aviation Academy and expensive out-of-state trips for district administration while vital programs are cut or severely diminished? 3, given the potential staff and program cuts at both primary and secondary schools, how will the district determine student eligibility for electives, AP courses, and other programs, particularly since losing access to these opportunities could impact students' future academic and career prospects? 4. Will class size at any PSD schools increase? If so, how do you plan to manage the issues that come with bigger class sizes? 5. What specific criteria was used to determine the involuntary placement of teachers, excluding administrators at each school? And 6. Is the district administration reassigning some of its highest paid, long-serving staff in an effort to encourage retirement or resignation? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pamela Locke. I'm speaking as a parent, but I do sit as a president on the PTSA board at KPMS. Title I eligible schools, how much title fund, number one, how much title funding, how much Title I funding did the district receive and how was it allocated and used at each school? 2, what specific strategies are being implemented to support the success of Title I eligible schools, and how are those strategies unique to those schools compared to other PSD schools? 3, will you explain why Purdy Elementary, just 6 miles away, has PACE, STEM, music, art, and PE teachers while Minter has only 1 music and PE teacher? Staff expression policy questions. Given the reported culture of fear among PSD staff regarding the staff expressions policy and district communication practices, what specific steps will be taken to address and repair this? Loss of trust. 1. In light of the erosion of trust between district leadership and the community, what concrete actions are planned to restore that trust? 2, how do you plan to address the potential decrease in student enrollment caused by, public distrust in district administration? Transparency. 1, what steps will the district take to improve communication and transparency with the community? 2, how is community input being gathered and used to inform your decision and ensure they reflect the values of the community you serve? 3, the school board has stated it has sent significant goals to the superintendent. What are those goals, and how does the district plan to achieve them, both in the short and long term at each school? Lack of shared values. 1, given that our community values long-standing relationships and a school culture rooted in trust and transparency, do the strategies, decisions, and lack of communication reflect a shift in the district administration's priorities away from these values? 2, excellent educators make excellent schools, and our community is committed to keeping them in our district. As parents, we see that many educators are unhappy with the district's current strategies. What is the district's plan to address these concerns and make PSD a great place for educators to work and stay? Providing detailed, transparent, and complete response to these questions will be an essential step towards rebuilding trust. We look forward to your thorough and timely reply so we can continue working together in the best interests of all students and families in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Taylor Marshall.
Hello, my name is Taylor Marshall, and I am here today to speak on agenda items 5.01 and 8.01, community comments. I am a proud graduate of the Peninsula School District, a taxpayer, a parent, and thanks to Mr. Jonathan Bill at PHS, I have been a registered voter since 2012. As an active member of this community, I voted for Lori Glover and Natalie Wimberly in 2021 when they ran unopposed, and voted for Jennifer Butler in 2023, going so far as to advise friends and family to do the same. You can imagine my surprise then when I discovered that I had helped elect more than half of this board, and yet they seem incapable of following their own policy 1400. Imagine my further surprise when I found that this policy has been updated to remove vital language that dictates the timing of public comment. As this policy was last revised less than 2 years ago with all sitting board members present, my only conclusion is that the board is inept at agendas and thus could not keep time, or they purposefully and maliciously move public comment to avoid their constituents. While I hope it is the first reason, I fear it is the latter. As an observer of last board meeting, it appears the board moved these agenda items in order to filibuster their own meeting and dissuade community members from speaking. By moving public comment to the end of your meetings, you are blocking out the very voices you are here to serve. As you are well aware, Tuesday is a school night, and it is unreasonable to expect parents of school-age children to wait to speak until almost 10 p.m. WASDA seems to be a guiding light to this group, as it often is quoted verbatim. So let me take this moment to point you in the direction of their guidebook, where it states that engaging with parents, students, and other community members ensures that their concerns and needs are reflected in your decisions. Listening and maintaining respectful communication helps build trust, end quote. I'm here to express that respectful communication during public comment means looking at the person who is speaking. It means giving adequate time. It means pausing for technical difficulties. It means scheduling comments at a time in the meeting where all stakeholders can be heard without it being at the detriment of our children and their nightly routines. May I remind the board that filing for our school board elections has officially opened, and that if you do not want to hear from your constituents, then you do not deserve to have constituents. To speak further to the decorum of these meetings, you cannot allow clapping and cheering when a student states that she likes cream on her pasta, yet try to silence the same action when someone states that they do not like Mr. West's racist comments. You cannot raise a gavel when a school board member is rightfully called out by name, yet not bat an eye when a high school teacher is named and shamed. I believe many sitting in front of me think PSD is their stepping stone to further their political, professional, or personal gain. And I want to be very clear that if you continue down this path, we will not be your stepping stone, but your sinking sand. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Josh Johnson. Mr. Johnson, are you speaking on an agenda item this evening?
So there's a missing piece in the budget report about enrollment levels. Parents are fed up with this board and administration and are removing their kids from the district. What are we fed up with? Stuff like polished PR statements to parents rather than accountability. As she just rightfully said, last meeting I cited board policy 1400, which clearly required comment at the beginning of the meeting. You decided to amend that policy, so you continue pushing it to the end, showing the disdain that you have for the community. Another failed policy, 3207, harassment, intimidation, and bullying. Schultz Bartlett targeted students with 3207 for merely following or viewing social media that referenced staff. Problem is, the policy doesn't permit staff to be classified as victims. But in her own emails, she admits that the district didn't follow HIB process when we reported our son was being harassed solely because the aggressor was staff. Instead of acknowledging the violation and doing the right thing, the district quietly changed the procedure so staff could no longer be considered bullies. When I raised these violations with Shelby Cobb, your state mandated compliance officer, the person entrusted to ensure HIB compliance, she first denied the plain language of the policy. When I provided the actual text she's supposed to enforce, she dismissed it with a condescending, "Thanks for your feedback." That's the level of seriousness the district gives to following policy that protects students' physical and mental well-being. But Cobb also has issues following policy. 3207 states a proper HIB investigation must include, among other things, a review of prior complaints, interviews with other witnesses or staff. I provided her with witness names, identified other students who had been targeted by Mr. Cruz. She refused to speak with them. She then claimed in her final report that she reviewed voluminous documents and 5 statements. I put in a public records request for all of this. I received 5 things, 5 statements. So which is it? Did Cobb lie in her report, or did the district violate the Public Records Act by withholding responsive records? Also, we have a superintendent who refuses to engage with parents, a sentiment dozens of other families have shared with me through my site, fixpsd401.net. But she happily takes our kids to Olympia and provides them with talking points to push her own political agenda. Finally, a parent can come speak to this board 4 times. Not one of you will reach out to address any of these concerns.
Thank you for your comments. That concludes comments on agenda items for the evening. Our next item is our consent agenda, item 6. Is there any discussion prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Lori and seconded by Jennifer to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried and the consent agenda has been approved. Our discussion and action items for this evening, item 7. First is item 7.1, the approval of the renewal of our Special Education Parent Advisory Committee Resolution 2504. Is there any discussion on the approval of the renewal of our Special Education Parent Advisory Committee? No. Is there a motion to
Emily's
approve?
back there go, "Oh."
What's that? I know, we're getting to it. We're almost there. Is there a motion to approve the adoption of the renewal of the Special Education Parent Advisory Committee, Resolution 25-04?
Yes, I make a motion to approve that.
Is there a second? It's been moved by David and seconded by Lori to approve Resolution 2504. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried, and the CPAC has been renewed. Congratulations and thank you. Item 7.2 this evening is the approval of the second reading of the recommendation for adoption of Core Knowledge Language Arts, the CKLA curriculum. Is there any discussion on the second reading, which is the approval of this adoption, CKLA adoption? Is there a motion to approve the second reading of the recommendation for adoption of Core Knowledge Language Arts, CKLA curriculum?
I'll move to approve CKLA curriculum.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by Jennifer and seconded by Lori to approve the CKLA curriculum. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. The second read of the recommendation for adoption of Core Knowledge Language Arts CKLA curriculum has been approved. Great job on that. That's exciting. Item 7.3 is the approval of the second reading of Policy 2023, Digital Citizenship and Media Literacy. Is there any discussion on the approval of the second reading of Policy 2023, Digital Citizenship and Media Literacy? Is there a motion to approve the second reading of Policy 2023?
So moved. Excuse me, so moved.
Is there a second? It's been moved by David and seconded by Chuck to approve Policy 2023, Digital Citizenship and Media Literacy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried and Policy 2023 is approved. Item 7.4, the approval of the second reading of Policy 3416 related to medications in schools. Is there any discussion on the approval of the second reading of Policy 3416? Is there a motion to approve the second reading of Policy 3416, medications in schools? Is there a second?
Second. For someone to push the button. So, second.
So it's been moved by Lori and seconded by David to approve the second reading of Policy 3416. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried. The second read of Policy 3416 has been approved. We're now rolling on to comments from the community on non-agenda items. So when I call your name, please come to the podium, state your first and last name. I think some people are not here. Maybe they signed up twice. Is Jessica Gamble here to speak on this? No, but you may send your comments by email and then come and speak. So you have to sign up before the meeting starts on the sign-up sheet? Okay. So Jessica Gamble, Pamela, and Heather, I think, signed up on both sheets. Okay, Carol Rivera.
Carol Rivera, Peninsula Education Association President. I don't have a prepared speech because I really don't think that all of my thoughts and words actually, I can put them into correct format. I think in general, the tone right now and the feeling in our district is pretty heavy, right? I think that from what we've talked about, what we've seen, there's just been a chain of changes that have really impacted individuals, right? So we sat through a presentation that kind of talked about budget and all those things that have to inform the decisions that are made to keep our district financially accountable and on track. I think that what we also need to remember is that the end of every decision is a person, right? Throughout the process in my role as president of our association, really the piece for me is to try to maintain the dignity of the individuals who are impacted and help them understand what's going on. We don't like the decisions that happen, but we also have to make sure that we maintain a process that actually protects those individuals and ensures that their rights and our contractual pieces are fulfilled. I think it's really hard and challenging because we often have to make decisions, but we don't necessarily see what happens down the line. And I really just want to kind of circle back to where I think that a failure of kind of the communication and the things that we need to think of those steps down the line before we make decisions really does go back to the staff expression policy that we discussed earlier this year. From the perspective of WASDA makes recommended pieces about policy, right? There's ones that are required, there's ones that are necessary for law, there are others that are optional. And I think that the impact on staff, as the parents and other people have articulated, as we have articulated, has been really uncertainty and not ability to use their voice in a way or to see that they actually still have the right to use their voice. Although I'm appreciative of the opportunity to work with my other union partners to advise and give direction on some of the procedures, I would just ask perhaps when there are policies that, especially because of a lot of the circumstance around our educators being bullied online and by a variety of different things, that we consider where we're supposed to be and the purpose of the policies we do, and you approve, so that we can then have full understanding of what they mean. Because in times like this, when people see a crisis, they need to have answers and know what their rights are. Thank you.
Thank you. And last, we have Jessica Murray. Jessica? Okay. All right, that concludes public comment for the evening. Item 9 on the agenda is our superintendent's report.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to really close us out this evening. I also agree that it is a heavy time at this time. I want to take a moment to sincerely acknowledge and thank all of our incredible principals in honor of School Principals Day, which we celebrated on May 1st. Their leadership and dedication and commitment to our students and staff are absolutely stellar and truly appreciated. We celebrate Teacher Appreciation Week this week, May 5th through the 9th. I always want to extend my deepest gratitude to our exceptional certificated employees. Their dedication, skill, and heart make our schools a place where students grow, thrive, and feel inspired every day. They are the foundation of our mission, and their impact goes far beyond the classroom, as we hear time and time again. This week, we also celebrate National School Nurse Day on May 7th, recognizing the vital role our nurses play in supporting student health and well-being, especially we really saw that during COVID, and their compassion and professionalism ensure that our students are cared for in every sense of the word. May is National Water Safety Month. Just as a reminder, as the weather warms up, please remember to stay safe around water and review safety tips with your family. And it's also Mental Health Awareness Month. We will be prioritizing the well-being of our school communities, and together we remain committed to educating and caring for every child every day. And lastly, I do look forward to working with our unions around the procedure. There are other school districts that have been very successful with their partners, and I look forward to really having those conversations with the very people that we have heard concerns about. I hope that they are on the committees as we move forward. I'm looking forward to that conversation, and there are other school districts that would be willing to share their own journey as well. So thank you.
Okay, we have board discussion and comments. Do we have legislative updates, or are we beyond that?
I would just say that the session is over, and the State House and Senate have sent their budget to the governor for review. Talking with several state legislators, probably Jennifer as well, there is a chance that the governor might request them to come back into a special session because there's some parts of the budget, especially around certain tax increases, that he may not be happy with, so they may be called back for a special session. That's up in the air, so, but for now, the session's over and they're just waiting for the governor to go through their budget and decide whether or not he wants to bring them back to hash out some differences. So, I don't know if you have one.
Yeah, and I just, one thing, I think, you know, and in all of the reading around what's going on with education funding throughout the legislative session, I just wanted to make people aware, I felt a pretty powerful op-ed that was published in the Seattle Times on the 30th by the executive director of WASA. And I would just encourage folks to look that up and read it because I felt it was probably the clearest, most succinct version of the deep disappointment and frustration that is being felt across the state, despite the most coordinated and the most targeted and the most well thought out advocacy efforts between school board directors, superintendents, business officers, teachers, and families that really has ever happened, and to still fall so short. It's a really powerful piece, so I encourage you to read that. And just kind of in context, you know, one thing we shared frequently with our legislators that Ashley had put together for us was that our district has been underfunded. Peninsula School District alone has been underfunded by $70 million in the big three areas. That's special education, material supplies and operating costs, and transportation. $70 million underfunded since 2020. That's only 4 years, and that's only going to get bigger. So it's just, it's kind of a mind boggle, and we're just one district, right? But the one caveat I will say is that I do feel very good that all three of our legislative representatives, our senator and both of our representatives, kept very open lines of communication. It was very heartening to see how much they reached out. It wasn't just us going to them, it was them reaching out to us, to you, to Ashley for information, for making the case for public education funding. So I do want to give the shout out to all members of the 26th legislative district, and thank you for their partnership. They did work hard. There were only 3 votes, but they consistently did support our schools. So that's it for legislative update.
Comments?
Yeah, I don't really have any comments other than I appreciate the really good, thoughtful presentation tonight and everything that everyone said. Having served on the school board for 12 years, you see ebbs and flows in a board. And when I got elected to the school board, none of these current board members were on the board. And there were superintendents back then that were being bullied by school board members and micromanaged and told, you will fire this principal, you will fire this person. And those principals, those superintendents pushed back, said, it's not your job as a board to tell me who to hire and fire and what to do. It's your job to manage me, but it's not your job to tell me how to run the school district. And so that was challenging as a school board to watch that. And we lost some superintendents that I really had a lot of respect for because of that. And at that time back then, and I know Carol's been around long enough, school board members were also told to sit in on school principal interviews and were allowed to voice and vote on who was hired to be school principals. And those school superintendents said at the time, it's how are you going to hold me as a superintendent accountable for the academic success of our schools if you're getting to help decide the principals? How are you going to hold me accountable when you got to help pick that principal? And so now you fast forward to today, our trust as a school board members is that we hire a superintendent that knows what he or she is doing based on their years and years of experience, and that if things work out, then we will appreciate that. And if they do not, then our job as school board is to hold her accountable for her actions. But having been on both sides of the fence, I choose this side And I choose to put our trust in our superintendent that she knows what she's doing, and that hopefully, and I feel confident that in a year from now, we will benefit from that decision. Thank you.
I just want to echo that. I appreciate your comments, David, and just to say that I have lived in this community for 35 years, and all three of my children and my husband grew up in and graduated from the Peninsula School District. And I am serving on the board. The whole reason I applied or ran for the board in the first place was just simply out of love of the community and a way to give back, and also a sincere and deep-rooted belief and appreciation for public education and the role it has in our society, and the way it is an equalizer and an opportunity for all students to go to school together, regardless of their situation and their circumstance, and for a variety of reasons that I'm sure many of you share. I believe in public education. Is it perfect? It's not, certainly not. And in fact, as we heard even just about the budget, there are parts of it right now that I would say are extremely broken, and that's a nationwide conversation and situation. So I'm not commenting on that, but just wanted to say that also, because I've lived in town so long, there have been times in the past when there were things happening in the district that I think were very things that I'd say would deserve to be labeled as untrustworthy behaviors by that weren't newsworthy. So this is going back a long, long time, but it takes a long time to come back from that and that kind of a reputation. And I just wanted to take a moment to say that while David just said our job as a board, and again, we're volunteers. We are elected, but we are here. We aren't paid. We're volunteers that are devoting our time and energy to making this the best district that it can possibly be. And I am very proud to be here and to work alongside you guys. And again, not at all saying that things are perfect, but I am very proud of the work we've done. Our number one job, I would say, is to hire. When I started, we did not have a superintendent. I started the same day as an interim superintendent, and then it took us a few years and a lot of work to hire who we believe to be the best person to take this district forward, and that is Preston Barr. And I believe that you are doing what we've asked of you and more in creating the strategic plan and doing what you feel like you need to do because you are the professional. So the board hires you, and then you are, the superintendent is essentially the CEO of the entire organization. So just having said that, I think not all decisions are going to be popular or even right. It's good leaders will recognize, when things need to be done differently and down the line, but disappointing decisions and untrustworthy decisions are very, very different. And I want to just make clear that I would say that Superintendent Barr is doing her level best to do what the board has asked of her, which is to take our district to the next level and to be academically excellent and innovative and all of the things. And so just wanted to make that comment. And also, I appreciated the budget presentation and the mention of how many staff persons we have in that far right column. This is back like 3 hours ago. But, and it is, I love that Ashley pointed out, that is fantastic and amazing. And our students are so lucky to be taught by a staff that is highly educated and highly committed to working in the district for as many, many years. And it is Teacher Appreciation Week. And so I want to give them a shout out. They work so hard every single day. And that is the whole reason that any of us are here, is because of our staff and the work they do. So thank you. That is all.
All right. All right, here we are, 9:36. I don't want to take too long, but I do want to say a few words. Again, we had excellent presentations, budget presentations, learned something new every time. So thank you, Ashley, for that, and thank you again for CPAC. Always makes my heart so happy. That committee in particular, I have a deep fondness for, and I'm very proud of the work you guys have done. And I do want to thank the parents who spoke tonight, community members who spoke tonight, and who did speak last meeting as well. I know that wasn't hard. I know for a lot of folks it was their first time speaking at a board meeting, and it is impersonal, it's challenging, it's hard for us. This is not a great format, and I know we've been in conversations about how to break down this dais, microphone, barrier to have real engagement and real conversations. And I look forward to working through that together, because I think, it's an overused line, but I'm going to use it. The Maya Angelou line of that people will forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they will not forget how you made them feel. And that is something that has kept me up for a while. How are we making people feel when these very rooted in budgetary, very real constraints are happening? And that is undeniable. But there's a way in which we can communicate and we can collaborate and come around sign and have these to make sure that people feel valued and seen during that. So I'm just committing for all of us, because we've talked about it, to reflect on our practice around that and how can, obviously, 100% adhering to bargaining agreements, adhering to all of these things, but at the same time, understanding that formulas and funding models and allocations result in real people, and striking that balance with compassion and clarity and clear communication. I think whereas our legislature, the job of our paramount duty of the state is to fully fund basic education, the paramount duty of board and administration is to have our staff and our families and our community be valued. And I know we can do it. And I know we do it, and this has been a very challenging time. There's so much change that is happening. It's in many cases gotten away from us, but I know we can do it. I see us do it all the time. So I'm hoping we can do a bit of a reset, and I have deep faith in our community because I've seen them rally. I've been out there. I know how much our community does love and support our schools. So I have deep faith that we can do it. We are in this together, and we can do it. Teacher Appreciation Week is right now, and one thing I really enjoy every year, and I would, I'd encourage others if you have kids in the district. I've been told by teachers and members of my family that the thing that teachers really appreciate the most is thank you cards from students. And what's been fun is every year I get my kids to write it. And when they're little, I had to kind of script it, copy it verbatim. But now that they're old enough, I give them a little bit of a prompt, which is, one thing you've liked, one thing that's been really hard, and one thing you'll always remember. And so it's just a really easy way that I think makes your kids reflect, and also I think is something hopefully that is, meaningful for teachers to hold on to. Because, for me, I appreciate, Lori, you talk about your why. I mean, my why is very similar, I think, as everyone is in this room is, a deep commitment to public education. And I just always will go back to this line, out of the public school grows the greatness of a nation. I believe in that. And at the heart of that are our teachers. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Infection. Crying.
You want me to follow that? I want to start out first by just talking about some stuff that happened recently here. I was at the Peninsula Band Boosters Dinner when you were at JRTC. And it was just, the kids talked about why they liked band and how it made them feel. And it was just so uplifting to see these kids that some of them were outcasts who didn't fit in, but they found their niche, and they just took it and went with it. Were so successful, and they were embraced by the other kids because they all had this thing that linked them together. And I hope we can see that in so many other things that we have going on, whether it's sports or whatever it is. And I really want us to push more music, obviously, arts. But it's just so enlightening to see the different kids that came from different backgrounds that all came together for music. I do want to say that I appreciate teachers very much. And I had a coffee cup. I used to teach for the fire service. And it said, to teach is to touch lives forever. And I thought that was so true, because I think back on the people who have impacted my life, and the teachers were those people. And I'll just, one little story. 5th grade, I am a little rugrat, I'll call myself. I came from a very poor background, and I knew I wasn't going anywhere as a kid. I struggled. And I wound up in this classroom, 5th grade. We had been moved. This was probably, I think, the third school that I'd been in 5th grade, because we had moved around. So I wound up with this one teacher. And he gave me a test. And after the test, he said, "Wow, you did so well. You know, you aced that." I'm like, okay. And he had me pumped up and believing that I had done so well. I don't think I really did. Now, thinking back on it, I think he just convinced me that I could. And I did, because after that, I really studied for him in that classroom and really made myself into something, because somebody believed in me, and that was a teacher. And so I'm very proud of this district, the teachers that we have, and thank you, teachers. I'm just going to leave it.
Well, thank you all. I think I'm going to keep my comments short, as it is yet another very late night. But I do want to acknowledge we've had some really hard conversations. We hear some really difficult and challenging feedback. We feel that. We know what many of you carry. And like Lori said, it's a tremendous honor and responsibility to be here and to kind of weigh that and try to govern through it. In light of the difficult things, though, we can't lose sight of all of the wins and all of the things to celebrate, and there are many. Most of what we do every day is a celebration. Clearly, we have our representative teachers, so if those who are watching online can't see, we have some teachers here with us, and I hope that you have felt from the board how much we value. It's so fun to celebrate, especially during this week, and I love the prompts and the letters for your kids. I think maybe if we can all go home and think about things about related to school, what do we love, what we'll remember, what's difficult, all of those, and maybe carry that with us. Driving by a bus stop, seeing kids with home garden picked flowers in mason jars. I know those are, it reminds me of the saying that, you know, if a child gives you a rock, take it, it's the most precious thing that he had, and it's all he had to give, and he gave it to you. So those flowers and the cards, I know they will be cherished, but know that families who celebrate and provide lunches, all of us, we're in it together with our teachers, with our staff. I had an opportunity to sit with bus drivers this week. It is really it's a big family. This is, of all industries, really, this is the one that is most impactful to a community, and I appreciate being a part of it, appreciate the work that goes into keeping it here together for the sake of the child. So with that, our next meeting will be here, Swiftwater, May 20th, 6 o'clock PM, and at 9:46, we are